Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's been a big week in gaming. I'm integot and he's Swinny for episode 10 for Sunday, the 20th of September 2020. In this week's show, we'll be discussing, finally, the PlayStation 5 price, pre-orders and release date has been revealed. Another surprise Nintendo Direct Mini partner showcase, and Swinpressions on, I don't even know how to say this name, Dontnod's Tell Me Why series. Swinny, save me.
That is my favourite intro of any of the podcasts we've done so far. It's Dontnod. What's hard to say about Dontnod?
Well, because it's an anagram, right? Oh, palindrome, sorry.
Yeah, it is a palindrome, but I mean,
Yeah.
It's pretty easy. Out of all the palindromes that could exist, it's one that's pretty easy to announce.
Sorry, when you have a Dontnod, it's not an English word. When I saw it, I thought I should just skip and say, "Tell me why."
Why didn't you?
I don't know. And if you do enjoy fine context like this, make sure you share with your friends and give us a 5-star review. How's your week been?
It's been pretty good, but I've been through a couple of journeys, and there's one that I'll get to at the end of the show in one of our features about Tell Me Why. But the other one, I just want to talk to you a bit about. I picked up my copy of Super Mario 3D All Stars about an hour ago.
Yes.
So the journey to get that though was interesting. So I think you sent me some links when they announced that the pre-orders were open, and I'm fairly certain they were EB Games links that you sent me. I'm fairly certain.
Yeah. The first ones, because EB Games are pretty good. They're almost always the first in Australia to go live, but I don't normally get from them straight away because they're not usually the best on price.
So it was during work hours, and we had this like team meeting, but it was one of those ones where you're just like, hey, you know, you're just there listening, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, oh man, I'm worried about this. So while, I was listening in, I'm like, I got to quickly pre-order this stuff. So I wanted to do it as quickly as possible. And that meant that, unfortunately, I went through the checkout process without creating like an account with EB Games, even though I technically have one somewhere, which meant that I didn't know how to access any more information about the order. Like I didn't get anything about some sent to my email or anything. And luckily, I got a missed call from them a couple of days before, and I couldn't get back through to them. And anyway, comes to yesterday, the release day, right? I called them up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, great, cool." So you'd put down, it was like $10, and then I had to pay the rest, right? $70 or something. And I'm like, okay, cool. So how does that work? I go into the store, and they're like, "Oh, unfortunately, we need you to actually purchase gift cards, and then you use the gift cards to pay for the remainder of the pre-order." And I'm like,
now this is because of. So again, context is I'm in Sydney. We don't have any lockdown or anything. It's pretty open in Sydney. I'm even considering going to see Tenet, which is a different conversation altogether at the cinema. Whereas you're in Melbourne and it's heavy lockdown.
Yeah, so any retail store like in EB Games is click and collect only, and so they've literally got the doors closed. You can't walk in.
Really? That's spooky, dude.
Oh, it's super super spooky. But so I'm
it's
like, okay,
1980s Russia or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the guy on the phone was super helpful, and he's like, okay, you can obviously get the digital codes through the EB store website, but you can also go through Zing Pop Culture, which is like their, I guess, sister outlet for the like the pop culture stuff. And he said probably go to Zing Pop Culture because they'll be getting less traffic to their site, right? I'm like, okay, cool,
that's smart.
So I go on there, and I was also paying off the Game and Watch thing, so I'm like, okay, I need this amount, and I'll get the gift cards, go to pay for it with PayPal, have an error. I'm like, okay, all right. Then I go back, okay, I'll pay for it with my credit card, and I'm like, error. Okay. All right. Well, I'll leave it, blah, 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 and I'll come back. Same thing again. And I'm like, So I'm like, bugger, I'm going to go to the EB store website. Same issues again. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to pay for this bloody pre-order because I need to go have it ready by the time before we record this podcast because I need to get up in the morning. And I finally got it paid off, and then it was just, I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. I could have just bought it outright and I wouldn't have had to do any of this crap. But I was so worried about it selling out that I had to pre-order. But I got there, I had to to read them out 2 different gift card codes over the phone, then go there, and I forgot my phone to call them up when I got outside the store. And I got the game, but I was just like, anyone that's interested in pre-ordering and they're in the middle of Melbourne lockdown, I'd probably maybe just wait till the restrictions are eased a bit. That's my advice.
But you could just get it delivered, right? From Amazon or something.
No, but I'm saying if someone is, I'm saying like pre-order specifically. If they
you wouldn't want to do pre-order pickup in Melbourne at the moment.
Well, that was kind of I went through that process quickly. As I said, I was technically at work, so I'm like, I'm just quickly going to do this, and I just went with that option. But the other thing
go on.
No, so I was just saying, and the other thing I was going to mention. So, on the way out, I got myself a hot dog and milkshake, right, from Donut King or something. And
this is like a ritual.
Well, that's the thing is, I'm struggling to remember. Were you there when I was given so much shit for getting a hot dog with a milkshake?
Yeah.
So you were there, okay? Because I just wasn't sure. I'm fairly certain you were. Were you one of the ones giving me shit about getting a hot dog and milkshake? I can't remember.
Yeah, for sure. But I have that as well. So I think it was just to stir you up.
Because that's the thing of like, is there some like hidden cabal of people that are like secretly against like hot dog and milkshakes, even though they sell them as meal deals? I'm like, man, it's like the hot dog deep state or something like that.
Hot dog and milkshake is like just about as anti-kosher as you can get. Because with kosher, number one, you can't have pork or anything like that. And then you also shouldn't be mixing like meat and dairy products within, I think, like a 12 or 48 hour or 24-hour period. So like that combination is like just about as anti-kosher as you can get, which is quite funny.
But you say hot dairy and meat. I mean, hot dog meat's pretty far along the meat scale.
It's almost vegetarian, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's almost you could almost not consider a meat product at some point. But all right,
yeah,
I just needed to clarify if you're one of those people. That's all.
I was definitely, but anything to stir you up is always worth it. But yeah, so like my sort of story on the pre-order is totally different. I pre-ordered it from JB Hi-Fi in person. And like with these kind of things, if I want it, like I'll just pre-order it straight away because I don't want to be in a spot where I'm kind of umming and ahhing and then it actually sells out. Like that just drives me nuts. But then at the same time, I'm one of those idiots that, I went to pick it up on Friday morning, pretty much as soon as I could before work. So I think I was there at like 9 a.m. And yeah, like, so I picked it up and then, I don't know, there was like 6 or 7 people that had pre-ordered it because they had the box there and you could see it. But then they had like literally like 100 copies on the desk. And I was just like, I don't know. It feels like whenever, you pre-order something and then it doesn't sell out or there's just stacks of copies everywhere, you feel, personally, I feel like a bit of a goose or something. It's like, oh, okay, I didn't need to be so frantic about pre-ordering this. But you never know, right? You never know.
Yeah. Yeah, pre-ordering's a weird thing. It's almost become just like ritualistic for people, even though there's absolutely really no need for it. Outside of, obviously, they'll give lots of bonuses these days for pre-ordering, but some of those bonuses just come along to the main game to everyone else eventually anyway. But
yeah, I think pre-ordering limited things makes sense, obviously, because it often sells out, especially in Australia. Pre-ordering, and we'll get to this shortly, pre-ordering hardware makes a lot of sense. But I've almost never pre-ordered games because, they're almost always available. But this was just a bit different because, how they kept on saying it's limited? I'm like, the way Nintendo is, like, I remember Astral Chain, when that came out, it pretty much just sold out straight away. And it was really hard to get a copy of it. So, yeah, I'm just conscious of that because I like to get the physical games rather than just digitally. Because obviously you can just get this game digitally.
Well, the games that I would generally pre-order... there hasn't been one in a while, but like any Mass Effect games or Souls games, because I like getting the steelbooks.
That's limited, yeah.
Yeah, so they're the examples of when I'll pre-order and obviously get on release for that. But the other thing I guess for me this week, I've just put so much time in a Kingdom of Amalur re-reckoning. It's like 60 hours at this point, and so that's another. I don't know, like 35 hours since the last podcast. And Look, I love that game, but I mentioned last week in my Swinpressions that, hey, if you're interested in picking this game up, maybe wait a week or two.
Mm.
And I would extend that even a few more weeks because it is so buggy. It is ridiculously buggy. I am at the point where it's crashing about once an hour for me to the to the whatever the desktop is you'd call in the Xbox.
Oh yeah, like the dashboard or
And
something.
dashboard, yeah. And it's great, but that is a problem because what I've read is that while they fixed up a lot of the visuals and they made some improvements here and there, they didn't fix any of the old bugs in the game.
That's awesome.
But they've got their
Backwards long
own,
jump.
but it's the addition, and they've got additional new bugs. So one thing is
so awesome.
yeah. One thing as a PSA for everyone is that, I mentioned last week that, hey, they did a day 1 patch that ended up being a day 2 patch to patch in that very hard mode, right?
Yeah.
There's an achievement for playing through the game on the hard difficulty. And I'd kind of been given a heads up by someone that playing it on very hard doesn't unlock the hard achievement, right? So normally it works that way where you play... It's like goes down the chain, right?
Yeah, like games that don't do that, and there is, we'll get to it in a second, but the secret game that I've been playing that I haven't even told you, it has this thing exactly the same. It's not achievements, but where you beat it on a harder difficulty, it doesn't recognize that you've beaten it at the easier difficulty, which drives me nuts. It's so stupid.
In this case, right, they're patching it, but anyone that's already started their game on that very hard, they're out of luck. They'll have to start the whole game again if they want that.
And there's some really serious game-breaking bugs I've heard in this game that they're frantically trying to patch.
Yeah, so what I've heard a lot of people say that whole enemies' bodies will disappear, and the problem with that is that some of those are like quest enemies that will have things you need to pick up off their bodies, like quest items. And I've been like staggering my saves. Like I've got like 12 staggered saves at the moment where I'll just cycle through, and I think I'm probably pretty good because I think the point where people started seeing that happen, I'm well past that. But man, it's such a shame because the game is really, really decent. And really, I love it, but in the scope of everything, it's a really strong game. But man, it's buggy as hell. They needed to have this in the oven for a lot longer. It's a shame.
Well, it's almost a game within the game, right?
Yeah. But man, I've played Fallout New Vegas. I'm used to this crap.
And I was wondering, before we get into the big news, it is genuinely a big week in gaming. It always is big week in gaming. Did you want to, how you sent recently, and I this was in the chat around achievements, but it was like parenting achievements.
Oh yeah.
Did you? I think that in my 3 years of being a dad, that this week I earned the hardest achievement. True achievement, it would have been 0.01% or something. Do you want to know what it was for?
Please tell me.
It's pretty gross.
Go ahead, share it.
All right, so my son, my eldest, he's 3. He he's kind of getting into toilet training now, and he was having a bath.
Here we go.
Right, he was having a bath, and he's like, "Oh, I need to do a wee." I'm like, "Oh, can I get you out?" And he goes, "No." So I'm holding onto him, and he's kind of like facing towards me, and he's kind of like straining a little bit, and I'm like, "What the heck is going on?" And then I can see something emerge from behind him. And I was just like, oh my God. Like I always was really fearful of this, and I usually give him a bath. Anyway, I'm not going to go into gross out details, but a few things. Like one, there was such volume of material. I was almost like, is this child sick? Like, how is this possible? Right? And to be fair, I didn't even know, I don't know. I don't inspect these kind of things. So maybe that is a normal amount, but it seemed ridiculous. It seemed comical almost. And then, I got him out, and you have to be pretty calm and it's all fine and not react or anything, or else it's going to get a complex. So that's all good. Cleaned him all up. Then I was left in the situation. It's like, what am I going to do? Right? Like, how am I going to fix this situation?
Do you have like a... But you don't have fish or anything, do you?
No, I don't have anything
Oh,
like
so
that.
you didn't have a net or anything. Oh, that's
No, I have
that's
nothing
great.
like a net. And I was thinking I probably could use like a plastic bag, but it was going to be really difficult. But because of this whole coronavirus thing, I have like so many gloves.
Oh, here we go. Here we
So
go.
physically, with my hands and gloves, I'm fishing out all this material. And I was just like, oh man, this is like a real parent. I feel like a real dad. I feel like a
Man,
real parent right now.
you should have just bitten the bullet and got like a colander from the kitchen and said, "Okay, your life is over now, colander. This is your last. This is your last task." And then you go into the bin and then replaced.
Well, I think my wife, she was saying I should just like pull the plug. But I'm like, it's gonna just stink the whole drain and everything like that. Like, I'm so glad I actually didn't do that. So it is what it is. I don't know. Maybe having dogs and constantly cleaning up after them, it's just like one step further. So it didn't bother me as much as maybe it should have. But far out, it was like I was fearing this day, and then it actually happened. I was like, oh god.
Yeah, I can't relate. I can't relate.
Oh, you don't want to relate. All right. Well, the most natural segue in the history of man. Let's get into the big news this week. So Sony had their PlayStation 5 showcase this week, and I think everyone felt like this was going to happen, but yes, they did. They revealed the PlayStation 5 price, pre-order details, sort of, the release date, lots of games, and lots of other stuff that's around the PlayStation 5 ecosystem, which is really exciting. So as we normally do, we tackle the biggest thing that happened in the event, and I think the biggest thing is really the price of the system. So it does come in the full-fledged disc model, so just the PlayStation 5, they're referring to it, is $500 US, $750 Australian dollars, which is exactly the same as the Xbox Series X, and the digital edition, which is like, to me, not that I would ever get the digital edition, but I was super fascinated to see what they were going to price it at. And they priced it at US $400 and Australian $600. And they're both coming out in Australia, US, and other territories like that, Japan, in the 12th of November, and then the week after in the rest of the world. So we're quite lucky, actually, in Australia to be getting it on launch day. So yeah, like what were your thoughts around the price? Did it surprise you? Did you hope for more, less? What were your thoughts?
Well, I guess my thoughts on this are very different than the Xbox because I'm going to buy into the Xbox ecosystem. Continue to do that just because I'm an achievement whore. But
see, okay, like you've almost like I should have written something. I wanted to like get your thoughts on like, is this whole package and some other stuff that they revealed, attracting you to this ecosystem, but it sounds like you're just like locked in, you're bolted into Xbox, you're not going to move.
Well, I have a complex where I need to hunt for things that have no value, and they just pop up and they give me some kind of dopamine hit whenever it does. So yes, because I'm an achievement whore, I need to stay with the Xbox system.
I'll introduce you to a new addiction, trophies, and there's a whole range that you can get.
But similar to how I've done in the past, what I'll probably do is I'll probably end up picking up previous generation PlayStation and catching up on a bunch of those games. So that's the way that I've kind of worked in the past with that. But when it comes to the pricing of the PS5 and the digital edition as well, I was kind of expecting them to, be pretty close to Xbox. I don't know why I was expecting them to maybe be slightly more, but the fact that they match them on the top level SKU is interesting. The digital edition, I think a lot of people were expecting that to mainly only be, let's say, in US dollars, like $50 less or something. The fact that it's $100 less is pretty crazy because from what I know, the only difference between the two systems is the lack of disk drive.
Yeah, so look, and I wanted to speak about this prior to the prices coming out, and I think if the podcast had been running longer, we would have already covered this. But for me, it didn't shock me at all, and if anything, I was expecting that or even more of a discount. And you just got to think about it from a business sense, right? Like ultimately, the attachment rate on these kind of consoles is, like just ballpark, like 6 games per console. And for Sony and for Microsoft, if they are getting purchases on digital, the amount of money that they make on that versus physical is just like magnitudes apart. So for them, like in the wash, like actually discounting the console even another 50, 60, 70 bucks, because let's be real, like the disc does not cost that much. Like the disc drive, like it's probably, I don't know, like a $20, difference in terms of how much it's costing them for a component. Probably not even that, but let's just even be generous and say 20. But driving people down a purely digital route where, they have to engage with the PlayStation Store or the Xbox Store to get like titles, and they're getting that sweet 30% off every single title, including, if they're new to the system, okay, buying all those games. So they're not taking advantage of used game prices or, other ways to get games cheap. They're going to make all the money back really, really quickly. Like, if not more,
Yeah, just from what we'd heard across the last, let's say, 6-7 months about the cost of the components for the PS5 being quite troublesome for them, and trying to drive that price down, I'm still surprised that it's $100 less. Like, mate,
well, I think
don't know.
it was always going to be a differential of about $100 at least. It's whether
a lot of people,
your point around the top end.
A lot of people were thinking that it was probably going to be a less of a gap between them. That's all.
Nah.
And so that, well, I kind of understand where they're coming from, because the core components outside of the disk drive are apparently the same. So if but
you don't price things on components. You price it on perception. You price it on what you can make in the long run. You don't.
Yeah,
you
I know.
Don't just go, that component costs $10, so I'll charge a 30% premium on that component. That's almost like irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm still surprised by it though. Like, it doesn't matter, because I've been listening to this discussions around this for a long time, and a lot of people were actually like, I didn't come to that kind of thought myself. It was actually based on what I'd heard a lot of people saying about it, and it just still surprised me. Like, when it comes to the Xbox Series S and Series X, no surprise there at all. Even though $299 US is still probably maybe slightly lower than what I was expecting, but it was understandable there, definitely. But just because we'd heard so much hullabaloo about the troubles that they had. Now, we know that since that started happening, that a lot of regions with the pandemic things started to ease up, and manufacturing started to pick back up again and things like that. Like, if it didn't, we wouldn't be in the situation to launch consoles anyway, probably. But it still surprises me that there is that much difference. But I do understand what you're saying. When you're talking about price points, it's not just about how much are we making back, how much profit, or the break even, whatever it is, about how much we can sell and what we can sell it for. But it is still surprising. If anything, maybe the fact that the top level one it matches the Xbox is maybe the thing that's probably a bit more surprising than, based on that, I guess, those industry murmurs back then, because I wouldn't have been surprised if US that would have been like, I don't know if they ever do like a nice clear, like, let's say $550 or something, or if it's normally like $549 or some crap like that. But I could see them getting away with a slightly higher bump than Xbox, just simply because people generally, Sony has a very big user base, and they're willing to sometimes spend a little bit more because they know it's a PlayStation. But
yeah, and I think
they matched
genuinely,
it.
Yeah, I think genuinely the DualSense has got a lot of tech in it, like probably a little bit like the Joy-Cons. So I think genuinely that part is more expensive for them. Like, they've even, Jim Ryan, the CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, he's sort of said, hey, a lot of the budget kind of went to getting that right, and sort of, focusing in on that, and to the exclusion of other things that they wanted to do. Look, I don't know, like, whenever I heard, a lot of industry pundits talk about a $50 price differential, I really thought it was really naive. Like, a lot of it was, I think, based on when Xbox or Microsoft released the Xbox One S all digital edition, the SAD edition. They released that with a $50 price differential. I think that's a totally different situation economically, because they're releasing that product, also for people who already have an Xbox One, and just go, I've got a lot of games in my digital library. I just want to get across, to the next revision without, spending a huge amount of money. So I don't think, and it's also like well into the cycle. So they're not going to be able to capitalize on a lot of the game sales from a digital perspective. So I don't know. Whenever I saw that and I heard people talk about, oh, the component costs this amount, so that much premium, I'm just like, that is not how you price things in business. Like, you know, like you need to look at what the market can sustain. Like, it almost doesn't matter if a component costs 1 cent. If you can sell it for a premium of $10, that's what you do. That's capitalism. That's how it works. So yeah, like that part didn't surprise me. But just going back to what you were saying, I would not have been surprised if they said it was $5.50 and the digital edition was $4.50. Like that would have, I was almost expecting that. Like, and maybe people get very annoyed with it. But you know, I think one thing that Jim Ryan did say recently was they pretty much locked in $500 and pretty much worked backwards from that. So, I mean, maybe that's also a reason why it's not as powerful, sort of, you know, in raw numbers as the Xbox Series X.
Yeah, it's the thing interesting, and this is definitely not news this week, but the fact that both of these consoles are going so hard on having that non-digital option as well. Like, this is truly, like, it was obviously already on its last legs, but just the retail industry, like physical sales, where this is essentially like this is the generation where it dies 100%, because like you'll still have
I don't know.
I reckon it will be by the end of this generation. Essentially, I think we'll be past that. Not to say there won't be ever physical, but I think as not so much something in Australia like a JB Hi-Fi where they've got, you know, it's one part of their offering. I'm talking about the standalone game stores. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, dedicated ones, yeah.
Yeah. And like obviously we're seeing the news about EB game. GameStop, yeah. So, which is, you know, the equivalent over in the US, just like the amount of new stores, and they've got obviously a lot more problems going on. But it's like it's a clear narrative for them, which is unfortunate in some ways, but it's just, you know, the nature of how things have gone. And it's as we've talked about it before. It's happened to movies, you know, happened to music before then, and so it's just a natural progression.
Well, and you look at PC games, like when I built my PC, it doesn't even have a DVD player or anything. Like the case doesn't even support that. Like there's not, I don't even know. I haven't really looked at the case properly, but I don't think, I can even put one in this case. So, you know, and look, I don't really lament that, but for whatever reason, video games to me, the physical element of it is like integral, and I almost always prefer buying physical, like over digital. And I don't know, I don't see it ending in the next generation. Definitely the one after that, they won't have discs or anything physical at all.
I'm talking standalone outlets. I think by the end of the generation, but not the multi-department ones.
Oh no, I'm talking about the actual consoles. So like the PS6 and the Xbox, whatever bizarre name they give the next generation if they make that generation.
Xbox
like
2.
I feel like they'd still have a disc drive, but you know what? Maybe what they'll do is they'll just have an optional add-on for the console to play discs or something weird like that. Who knows? Yeah. But that's like 7 years from now. just going back to this, like I genuinely think the Series S for the Xbox is so compelling in the US, and it annoys me in Australia that if you do the conversion, so you just basically take, you know, the US price, you have to add GST. People who don't do that is stupid. Like they don't have sales tax in the pricing in America. So you do pay sales tax depending on your state in America. So you have to add GST on it. So once you take a US price, add GST, convert it to Australian dollars, the Series X, PS5 and PS5 digital are all like basically priced in with no margin, which is pretty good, right, for Australian context. Whereas the Series S, it's an extra $50 that they've added on to it. So if you just translate the raw numbers, it should be $450 Australian, but it's $500. And to me in Australia, $500 for an Xbox Series S, which is like underpowered, versus a PlayStation 5 digital for $600, that's just like a no-brainer. Like, I don't know. Like I get, you know, if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, if you're in the Sony ecosystem, it probably won't matter to you as much maybe. But I don't know. I look at it and I'm like, that's just I feel like a misstep. 450 is just such a more attractive number than 500, especially when it's close to that $600 figure on the PlayStation 5 digital.
Oh, look, I agree, but I think the Series S is almost like it. The audience for that is so different than any of the other three. Like I see the other three as obviously the Series X and then the top level PS5. I've got to think of a better way to say that. Just the PS5.
Yeah, it's just called the PS5, which I actually like that they've done that.
Oh, I know it is. I just like in my head, I'm like, how am I saying this? But yeah, the PS5 and the Series X, like they're to me they are essentially the same audience in many ways with slight differences. The PS5 digital is slightly different on a bit of an offshoot on that, but the Series S to me is really targeting a different thing. But I completely understand. Like there's people that are just in a situation, what console am I going to buy for Christmas for the kids?
Yeah.
And at that point, it is like there is a comparison to be made. I think that these are launch prices, so I think it'll be interesting to see where the pricing is at. Let's say in 18 months or so, or 2 years, because I think at that point it'll kind of there's a long there's a long way to go till then. But I think then things will be probably a bit clearer about where the pricing falls. For the rest of the generation.
And look, they've taken very distinct strategies. Like the PlayStation 5 digital versus PlayStation 5 is literally the same except a disk drive, whereas the Series S and the Series X, as we said last week, it's significantly underpowered. Now, targeting almost like a different resolution, which I think is a really cool way to think of it. It's just, hey, if you're playing on like a 1080p setup or a 1440p setup, you don't kind of need the Series X, in my opinion, outside of the disk drive. So it is interesting to me that there are different strategies. I don't know. It really, I know it sounds trivial to say like $50, but to me, that $50 difference has kind of put me off the Series S, because I might have eventually got a PlayStation 5 and then maybe had a Series S on the side, just to unlock Game Pass and everything like that. But yeah, being 500 versus 450, it just, I don't know, it's very unappealing the way they've structured it.
But it also depends on what you're getting it for, because you've talked about, the Series S might be a Game Pass machine, and at that point, you're going to quickly make up that $50 on what you would have purchased outright on the other console.
Well, I shouldn't have to make up the $50. Like they've added that in as a tax,
I know that, but I'm just trying to find, like I'm not trying to convince you, because I honestly, it is what it is. It's more, I think that in the long term scheme of things, like $50 isn't probably going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and I mean, it sounds like we've already revealed our hands, but you're not interested at all in the PS5 or PS5 digital. It sounds.
No, only because I'm just weird, and I generally always I've always been that with PlayStation ever since the first one, where I will always get into it like a generation late, and I'm a bit late on that when it comes to the PS3, definitely. But when it came to PS1, PS2, that's exactly the way I did it. And the way that I also filled in the gap about the Final Fantasy games that I hadn't played, and a lot of the big hitters like Metal Gear Solid games that hadn't made it at that point to any other consoles. And it's a bit different now, I think, because we're seeing a lot of this stuff get re-released and there's backwards compatibility and things like that. But there's still a whole bunch of PS3 and definitely PS4 games that I haven't played that I still plan on playing. But so that's the way I'll be doing it. And given that they announced essentially, we do have at some point at a note here, probably in the next section, the whole backwards compatibility thing. It doesn't really make sense for me to get a PS5 if I'm planning to play those older games anyway. So.
Well, I'd almost argue the opposite, which is like it doesn't almost make any sense to get a PS4, because if you get a PS5, then you'll be able to play all the PS4 games practically. And
no, so I'm looking to play PS5 ones. I'm looking to play PS3 games.
Well, you can't play PS3 games on a PS4.
Yeah, that's why I'll be getting a PS3. That's what I'm saying. I'm actually late on that.
So we'll chat in 10 years when you get a PS5.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Is I said like I'm catching up by that, and that's why if the PS5 was back to the PS3, that's honestly probably a pretty easy decision to make. Maybe not right away, but I'm just the kind of person, like, I love playing older games. I don't have
same.
with very few exceptions. I don't have that like jarring. Oh, this game looks and plays really outdated, and that's just me. So I'm cool to go back and play, especially you're talking RPGs. Like a lot of that stuff is turn based and things, so it doesn't really matter as much if the camera's not great. But can I ask, integot? Say I wanted a PS5, how would I currently go about getting myself one?
You'd have to tune into our Twitter feed because I've been blasting links where available. It has been a shit show, to put it simply. Like in Australia and in the US as well. Like in the US, I think it's even worse. In Australia, I think the Australian way is kind of like we just expect it to come out randomly, and I don't know why, but I think it's just. A lot of the marketing hubs for these companies don't have a huge presence in Australia. So, Nintendo is really just a sales distribution channel in Australia. Like, there isn't really a big staff there. So, if they kind of go, oh, hey, it's on pre-order now, everyone in Australia just goes, oh, yeah, okay, and just scrambles. And it was a nightmare. But in the US, it was shocking because Sony actually said, don't worry about it. It's going on pre-order tomorrow. And a lot of people just said, all right, I got other things to do. And then randomly, almost all the retailers put it up for pre-order. And it got sold out. So that was in the US, which I think was way worse. But even in Australia, yeah, like it went up. Like I shot out the links to some mates. One of our mates ordered a PS5. And then, yeah, just like got sold out within, it felt like 10 minutes, not even potentially.
So from what I heard, so they had the showcase, and they didn't mention anything about pre-orders in the showcase. But right after the showcase,
correct,
the news about that date pretty much first came from Jeff Keighley. Is that right?
Yeah, more from the US. But he was interviewing the head of marketing for Sony, like Sony Interactive Entertainment. But whenever I say Sony, I mean the subdivision where they look after PlayStation. And they said, yeah, don't worry about it. It will be on sale tomorrow. I mean, it kind of does give you the context that as powerful as companies are like Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, the retailers do their own thing, and there's no control over them saying don't do that. So yeah, you're kind of burning a bit of a relationship there, but I think it becomes a bit of a, hey, we just want to sell out our allocation. Who knows if it will sell out, COVID, etc. So I think some of them just pulled the trigger, and then, as soon as one breaks that date, like they all just go stuff it. Like we're going to do it as well.
And
so I think that was bad. That was bad because people didn't expect it. So people are really annoyed about it, fairly, I'd say.
Do we know whatever happened with the whole register for a chance at pre-order via PlayStation directly?
I think they're still doing that. It's really weird. You know what? It's been funny, hasn't it? Because there's been a lot of pre-orders in the last few weeks for lots of different products. Like we would have had, not that we have spoken about it, but the NVIDIA 3080 series of graphics card, they have had crazy pre-order things. Game & Watch, that ran out really quickly. So yeah, and with the Australian one, like what I would say to people is, also focus in on, the not smaller, but the players that don't pay as much attention. So the Targets and Big W's, a lot of the times, I don't know, they're just very haphazard, and they like launch their pre-orders and then it runs out, and then they I don't know, find new allocations or new stock, and then they'll update it. So I even posted on Twitter yesterday, hey, Big W, you can pre-order it again. And people just aren't aware of it because, they don't make a big hullabaloo about it. And it's, like things like EB Games, JB Hi-Fi, they get all the attention. And, EB Games, so that's like the GameStop for us in Australia, they sold out on the launch day PS5s. Then they sold out on all the 2020 PS5s. Then they started selling 2021 due PS5s. And then now they've just said,
that's ridiculous.
We're not taking any more pre-orders. Because I think they realized that it's going to be like 3 months before people can get their PS5.
A 2021... actually, I guess when I think about it, it's only 2 months. Yeah, but...
Well, and that's the bizarre thing about this whole thing, right? Because normally we would hear this news at latest, say, June, like E3, and, for November launches and the new consoles. But this has just been an odd year, and it's been pushed back so much that, yeah, it's such a quick turnaround time. But yeah, look, like, follow us on our socials. I'll always post it out as quick as possible. I think also outlets like Press Start in Australia, they're pretty good at like getting the word out quite quickly. And you've seen a lot of odd behavior. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the video game store, The Gamesman. It's like a New South Wales based one.
Yep.
So they've got an awesome store. Like, I love their store. They have like a retro museum, and you got to, like, when you're up in Sydney next time, we'll go visit it. It's really, really cool, man. Like, it's a really cool place. Like, they're genuinely passionate about games. I really like them. But I thought this was a bit dodgy. But, fair enough, it's capitalism. They can do what they want. It's nothing illegal what they did, but they had pre-orders. But what they did was, when you pre-ordered, it was like a PS5 plus an extra DualSense controller, or like a PS5 plus a DualSense controller and like a VR camera or whatever it is. Like, the streaming camera that they're releasing for the PS5. You couldn't just order the PS5 by itself.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it shouldn't be allowed, but I'm sure they've got the ability to do that.
Well, they're allowed to do it, but it's just, it doesn't, like, given how desperate people are, I get it from a business sense, but, I think you get a lot of bad press if you do that kind of stuff. And people were very, very annoyed with them. So, yeah, and like I said, just, keep an eye out. Like, I think Press Start's pretty good. I'll keep tweeting on about it, but, Big W seems to have stock, like it seems to come back. The other thing I'd recommend is just go in person to like a JB Hi-Fi or a Big W or a Target and talk to the manager there, because they often can sort of work something out for you. Like, think outside the box a little bit there. Obviously in Melbourne, you can't do that at the moment, which is unfortunate. And one thing I would really warn people is with Harvey Norman, be careful about pre-ordering from them, because they have a very long and infamous history of like over allocating and then just canceling people, and they cancel it on the day people go to collect it. So people have been really annoyed about that, especially with limited items that you can't get again. So I just completely avoid them, and I wouldn't even use them as a backup because I just don't trust it. And just moving on to related news. So this was also revealed in the showcase, and I thought this was like super, super clever. Sony revealed the PlayStation Plus collection. So, one of the questions that people had, so with PlayStation Plus, you get, it used to be, a PlayStation 4 game, PlayStation 3 game, PlayStation Vita game, and then it evolved just a PlayStation 4 game, usually one or two. Recent ones have been really good. You've had Street Fighter 5, Fall Guys, stuff like that. That's awesome. But then, the question became, what are they going to do with PlayStation 5? Are they going to release a game for free? Like one of the launch titles, are they going to make it free? Like, how are they going to manage that? So what they've done is they've actually said that 18, and I would actually say 18 of the best PlayStation 4 games are going to be available through backwards compatibility at launch of the PS5. And just to be clear, this is only on the PS5 with PlayStation Plus. So you can't get PlayStation Plus for the PS4 and then unlock these 18 games. It's, just on the PlayStation 5. We'll cover all the titles in the bargain bin, but, these are the Gods of the War, Last of Us Remastered, Monster Hunter World, which is thematic for this episode, Persona 5, like really huge heavy hitters. It's still not clear, and I've done like a lot of research on it. It's really not clear if this is they're going to allow this for the first month or year or 6 months or permanently, like how that actually works. Because the way it works with PlayStation Plus is if you don't unlock the games in that month that they're available, they go away, which is, similar to Xbox Game with Gold. So that's kind of up in the air. I wouldn't imagine they would only allow like a 1 month or 2 month window, because I think that would really piss people off who weren't able to get the console. But, I wouldn't be shocked if they made it so, to unlock this, you needed to get the console in, say, before March or something like that to unlock it. So I'm sure more details will come out shortly. The other interesting thing on this is, Jim Ryan, again, the CEO of Sony, was really clear that this is not going to become Game Pass, because a lot of people are already saying, oh, this is PlayStation's Game Pass. They've said, hey, this doesn't make sense. It's also a bit of a swipe at Microsoft. The economics of Game Pass don't stack up. And this is really just a way to celebrate the PlayStation 4 library. And, especially people who are new to PlayStation, hey, here's like 18 great games that you can start with, and then all the launch titles that are coming out. So what did you think of this?
Well, first of all, I really want to play that game called The Gods of War. That sounds great.
No, I meant to say it in terms of the Gods of War, like those type of like heavy hitters.
I know. I look, this is great, especially for anyone that's picking up something the game the system at launch. It gives them a whole bunch of stuff to play because we know that a lot of launch titles, whether or not it's Deathloop or other games, just honestly, both
Riveting.
consoles have kind of a bit of a weak lineup, especially
Oh yeah.
Xbox. So this is great, and the thing that surprised me the most is the fact that you got some pretty prominent third party big hitters. So whether or not it's Monster Hunter World or Persona 5,
Yeah.
they're the things that surprised me because when they started showing off all this first party Sony stuff, it's like, okay, that makes sense. Cool. They've got the ability to do what they want with this stuff, and then suddenly they show those. And they even had, I think, Arkham Knight in there, which interestingly left Game Pass like a month
Mm.
ago or something like that. So it was really, yeah, I think it's great. It'll be interesting to see, as you've mentioned, what happens with this service, if it is something that's limited or not. I really hope that it is something that kind of doesn't exclude the people that weren't able to get something right at launch because the pre-order, we've already gone through the whole pre-order debacle. So if it is very limited, let's say for the first 3 months, but people can't get a hold of one for 3 months because of all these issues, it kind of sucks for that. But hey, it's a nice addition, especially considering it's not something that you have to pay more for if you've already got PlayStation Plus, which not everyone does have. I think it's great.
Yeah, like so if I was to predict it, I am almost certain it's going to be limited. And I think your point is very accurate that Sony keeps denying this, but it just seems like they are not able to produce as much stock as they would want to. They kind of said the other day that they have more stock available than they did for the PlayStation 3, I think. Or I don't think they were saying for PlayStation 4. I think they were actually saying PlayStation 3, but it might have been PlayStation 4. But look, they don't seem to be able to keep up with demand, and the fact that even EB Games in Australia, who actually are pretty good with giving you an insight as to how much stock there really is out there, the fact that they're running out of their 2021 allocation early 2021 shows that like there's not enough stock for the demand. So I think if they felt confident that everyone could get one within the first, say, 3 months, then they probably would have given it an end date of, say, the end of March. But, they don't want to get that backlash. So I think they're holding off and waiting to see, supply versus demand. And, once it gets to a level where it's fair, maybe in December they'll come out and say, actually, like this is going to run out in April or June or even March again. I can't imagine a world where this will be permanent. Like those licenses are just like the Monster Hunter Worlds. Like that's Capcom's biggest game ever, like including Street Fighter, Resident Evil, all these games. Like there's no way that they'll allow that to be free permanently as part of PlayStation Plus. Like it just doesn't make sense. So it's a great incentive. And the thing that I wanted to ask you in this segment was really like, is something like this compelling to you? Because like a lot of these games are the exact games that you haven't played because you're not in that Sony ecosystem, and it's sort of like, hey, here's 18 games, and pretty much I can imagine a world where you play 15 of the 18, like excluding the ones that you would have already played because it was cross-gen. But is that something that makes you go, oh, okay, it's kind of interesting, or you're just so bolted on with the achievements you can't move?
Yeah, well, that's less about, in this case, about the achievements. Like that's obviously a reason for me to stick with the Microsoft ecosystem. But I've mentioned before that I'm still looking at the previous generation games that I still like to catch up on, especially when we're talking
Or
about
like
something like an
PS3?
Uncharted. Yeah, and I know that
Yeah.
some of those things are Uncharted. They've done the collections on PS4 and things anyway, which are probably the best ways to play them. But it's I still want to play through God of War 3 before I ever get to the remade, the I guess the rebooted God of War and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's I think for me, I don't have a problem buying these games, but I think for people that didn't have as that I guess had to I'm not made of money, but like I'm not seriously having to budget my game purchases like a lot of people will unfortunately have to, and it makes sense for those people from a price standpoint, 100%. I'm just if Xbox didn't have Game Pass, then it would probably be a lot more of an incentive because Game Pass, just there's still so many games there that I'm sitting at looking, oh man, I'll download that. Now that, like the Yakuza games are adding all those into that, and there's just a whole
Yeah.
bunch of games that I haven't played in my own backlog of, whether it's physical. I think I got something like 100 sealed 360 games that I've never touched and things like that. And it's like, oh man, when am I ever going to get to these? Like, I'm probably going to resell most of them, but there's just so many games. So for me, if it wasn't for that, it would be compelling. But I think it's great for the majority of people, though. I'm not downplaying it. It's more just my personal situation. And look, there's definitely something there, like Persona 5. I'm still holding out some hope that they may, eventually do some Switch ports there. But if anything, Persona 5 will probably hit Steam at some point, like Persona 4. I think it's Persona 4, or is it Persona 3 recently hit Steam, one of the two.
Yeah, Persona 4 Golden.
Yeah, so I've got a PC that I'm not using enough for games, so there's chances there. And who knows, maybe they'll start porting some of these titles, just like they have Horizon to PC. So maybe that's a way for me to play some of them as well. So.
Yeah. Well, why don't we get into the games then?
Yes.
So we'll run through maybe more like the highlights of the games. There's a lot more games that were discussed or brought into the showcase that either just don't appeal to us, e.g. Five Nights at Freddy's or Fortnite, and probably focus more on the games that we haven't heard much about. And a lot of them rumored, and some not so much, but finally confirmed in this. And starting from probably one of the ones that have been rumored and sort of like felt like a lot of troubled development, a lot of intrigue around it. And now we know as Hogwarts Legacy, which for me, I'm not a fan of that name at all. I don't know what you think of the name.
Oh, well, name's fine to me.
Okay.
We'll get into my thoughts about it in a second.
Yeah, so like this is a very long rumored game, and screenshots or like videos of it supposedly had been leaked previously. So this is set in the Harry Potter universe. I don't like how people are calling it a prequel to Harry Potter. I mean, it's set in that universe and it's set in the 1800s. And I'm not very familiar with the Harry Potter book series, but to me, it sort of didn't feel like a prequel to it. It just felt like it was set into that universe, and it's trying to tell its own story, and hence why like the whole 1800s setting coming out in 2021. And probably the other thing to just sort of call out in this is, there's a lot of, controversy around J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. And, the developer and the publishers have come out very strongly saying, we don't support those sort of statements. And also she isn't involved at all in this game. But I do feel really bad for whether you agree or not about the comments by the author. I just feel bad that, people who are making this game, like more the developers, artists, all these people, it's like coloring this game. And there's a lot of people who are like, oh, we should boycott this game. And yeah, I just kind of feel a bit bad for those folk who are working so hard on this game, which it does look cool. It's not necessarily the most appealing thing to me, but it does look like a really cool game.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, we know that at some point the money will flow through to her. So the fact that them saying,
oh yeah, it will.
Yeah, that she's not involved. I mean, that's like, they're not going to sit there saying, oh, but there's a certain contract arrangement with her. I know they're not going to say that, but keep that in mind that she will still be benefiting from you purchasing this game potentially.
For sure.
But when it comes to this game, look, I'd say the trailer was pretty impressive. The thing for me is that I've just had very little interest in anything Harry Potter ever. I've only ever seen the first four films, never read any of the books. I think that whole craze, I think I was just like, maybe just 5-6 years too old for that to probably hit in the right spot. And I know a lot of adults. A lot of adults obviously love reading those books, and it appeals to a wider audience. And I quite like the third and fourth films. But the thing that actually interests me is the fact that Avalanche Software are working on this, because I actually really, really enjoyed their Toy Story 3 game, which was, I think, 2010. And that was actually a really well-received game at the time. But actually looking at Avalanche Software, I can't believe they worked on a 64 game in 97 called Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero, which is
Oh,
which is the
odd.
to clarify, the 64 version. Midway worked on the PlayStation version. I'm just like, wow, I didn't know that. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's that
I
is a
I
horrible
love those
game.
old. I love those old days. Like they never do it anymore, but where they get different development studios to work on the same game, but like on different systems. So like a
It still
Genesis game and a Super Nintendo game.
yeah, it still happens, but you don't see the differences between them like we
No,
used
no,
to.
no. But it's not. You're talking about ports. I'm not talking about ports. I'm talking about they make. It's like they're making the game from scratch
I
and
know,
just coming
I
up
know,
with their
I
own
know.
ideas. It's like bizarre.
But
I think it was
the reason I'm saying
here you
that
go.
still happens because we saw it a lot with the Wii and like the 3DS and stuff. Like there were cases where
True.
they were essentially creating different versions of the same game, but
Okay,
not as much as
that's
we
a fair
used to.
point. Yeah, that's a fair point. Like where especially with 3DS and DS, where
Mm.
those systems are so big that there was a lot of games that had a DS or 3DS version that was actually a pretty different game. Like some
Yeah.
were even 2D games, when the base game was the 3D game, so completely different. So yeah, no, like it's an interesting game. Like, and I think people are not understanding how big this game is. Like, this is going to be a smash hit. This game.
Hmm.
Like, if it's at all decent, like in terms of how it plays, I feel like this game is going to be so massive.
But the big thing that I wanted to talk about
Is the
was
next one Final Fantasy
was
16?
what they opened with, Final Fantasy 16. So
Yeah,
this
I was
is
pumped for
definitely
you when I saw this.
it's definitely rumored, but I don't think anyone expected it to be announced in this showcase.
But
It
when you say rumored, it like people didn't know what the setting was or anything, right? So I mean, Blind Freddy could tell you there's going to be Final Fantasy 16. Come on.
Oh no, but rumored that we would hear something about it soon is what I took,
Mm.
because we'd heard some
Okay.
comments from like the producer and things like that about what the next game was gonna, things like
Okay,
that.
fair enough.
Relatively recent, but this trailer, it opens up. You're like, okay, it's Final Fantasy straight away. There's so many things about it, and
Yeah.
obviously then it comes with the chocobo, and it's confirmed. But it one thing that immediately hit me about this was, obviously the setting is very different than the recent Final Fantasy games. It is essentially going back to probably, I'd say, a Final Fantasy 6, no, actually probably before Final Fantasy 4 and 5 level of, I guess, technology in the world, from what it seems.
Yeah, like
Um,
steampunky.
well, no, but that's what I'm saying. Like, not even 6. 6 had kind of those elements, and we don't really see much of that in this. If anything, what the
Mm.
trailer actually reminded me heaps of was specifically the first episode of Game of Thrones. There was so much to it that
Oh.
really, like, I don't know if you remember the first episode, but there's like they're in Castle Black in like the courtyard.
Yeah.
There were
Yeah,
so
it's
many shots in
slow.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many shots in this trailer were in a similar looking courtyard, and then they're in like those big town halls, like, with the tables, and I'm like, man, this is like Final Fantasy meets Game of Thrones in some way, and it was really cool. But I will say there's a few things that really put me off about this,
Oh, okay.
and it's not going to put off everyone though. First of all, I know why, but I'm not a fan of them sticking with the character action style combat. I've Final Fantasy 15. There's a lot that I love about the game, but the combat system was not one of them. They did improve it though. I will say that to the Royal Edition. From the
Mm.
base game, it was pretty rough. The Royal Edition added a lot more. Also made the party members a lot more unique with their own, I guess, combat mechanics. But it's not what I'm looking for a Final Fantasy game, and I don't know if we're ever going to go back. It's such a shame, but I understand that it's a lot more accessible to people if they can press a button and the character does something immediately and it feels responsive. I do miss even the ones that are kind of I guess a bit of a hybrid systems, whether or not it's 13 or 12, and 10 is my favorite system from battle system from the whole series, but
Yeah.
that's the one thing that kind of did disappoint me. And the other thing was, I'm always like, the Final Fantasy games have always almost been the graphical benchmarks of, that looks next gen. When we first saw Final Fantasy 10, it's like,
Mm.
oh my god. When we first saw
Final
Final Fantasy
Fantasy 7, dude.
well, 7, yeah, but like I'm thinking more from PS1 to PS2, Final Fantasy 10. Oh my god, when we saw Final Fantasy
Yeah,
13
I
for the
agree.
first time, everyone's like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
that looks incredible."
Yeah.
If someone told me this game was running on a PS4 Pro, I wouldn't. I'd believe them. It didn't. There's a nature to it, like especially when you start looking at the character models and the hair. It looks to me like just. It's like I was.
So,
it wasn't giving me that oomph that the Final Fantasy games moving to a next generation has normally given me.
so just on that, right? So, for me personally, there's only one single game, and it's the game we're not even going to talk about. The only game that I've seen so far out of Xbox and Sony where I've gone, oh, okay, that actually looks legit like the next gen is Ratchet and Clank. And not so much just how it looks, which it does look incredible. It's like, they're going, hey, this is gameplay. And look at it. It's like flipping to this area, that area. And I think that component of it feels very next gen to me, where it's not like, here's a long corridor so we can load assets in the background and then pop you into the world. It actually genuinely felt like, wow, they are really taking full advantage of this insanely fast SSD and building a game around that, which is like a very Nintendo style approach. Outside of that, no game has really like blown me away that much. And I think it's also like PC gaming is so huge, it's blurring all the lines anyway for me. So I'm probably not even as familiar with like, this is the max of what a 1X can look like, or a PS4 Pro. So I get like that's how you feel. But for me, none of these games really like make me go, wow, this is like so far in advance. Like it's actually one of the smallest gaps that I can think of in any generation.
I know. I'm just... That's usually the Final Fantasy titles moving to generation hit that. And Final Fantasy 15 did as well, probably to a lesser extent. This game, it does look a lot like 15 in terms of the presentation. And what my hope is that...
Oh, really? I didn't think that. That's interesting.
Oh, no, presentation in terms of like, okay, like how good the character models are and that. And I know that it's more, don't get me wrong. But what I'm hoping is that this game is likely super early in development still, or at least to the point where, we know that Square Enix take their time with their games. I look at this and I'm more impressed by the Final Fantasy VII Remake, honestly, in terms of the character models and things like that. But that aside, I'm super hyped for this game. I was even more super hyped when the trailer said, oh, also for PC. And then turns out they've removed that, scraped that, scrubbed that from all the trailers now, which is like...
I know.
Let's talk about Demon Souls next. The same thing with that. What a mistake to make. Oh, what a thing to scrub back. That's shitty. That is really shitty.
No, but you know how these arrangements work. Like, they do a deal with them, and it's sort of, and it's weird. We're getting to Demon's Souls. I hate that name. Like, because it's just hard to say. Demon's Souls next. But, in general with the exclusivities, they'll go, hey, it's for a year. Like, we don't even want you to say that. You can't even confirm what other consoles it's going to go on. Yeah, that's just kind of the course of business for me.
No, this was super shitty because they put it in the trailer and then they scrubbed it immediately afterwards from the trailer.
An error. It's obviously an error. They didn't mean to say that.
On two different games.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that
sometimes happens in business.
This is shitty. This is super shitty because...
What's shitty about it? I don't get why you think it's shitty. What's shitty about it?
Well, confirm that. Don't put it up in the trailer. Two different games and then have to retract it immediately the same day.
If you sign a contract with someone that says you can't speak about whether it's going to go on something else, which is what you do in how you draft those contracts, you have to remove it and then you can't speak about it. You've made the mistake by basically confirming it. Let's be real. Demon's Souls and Final Fantasy 16 are coming to PC, guaranteed. Like, it's going to happen, right? They've already put it in the trailer, right? It's just that they legally wouldn't have been able to say that because they would have signed a contract. Demon's Souls is weird because it's actually kind of like a PlayStation IP. So that one is really weird.
Dude, you're giving them too much leeway. Get that right before you put it in the trailer. I don't care. Get it right. Yeah, you're saying, oh, it's not a big deal.
No, you said leeway.
Right.
No, I get it. They made a mistake, man. They made a mistake. I don't know why you think it's shitty. It's just like they stuffed it up and they fixed it.
It's usually
and it's obviously coming to PC.
It's usually shitty for people that, well, that's the thing is like until they turn around and say
it's
otherwise.
Coming to PC.
Yeah, I was. This
You're not
was.
going to accidentally say it's coming to PC. You're not going to accidentally say that in a million years. No way. It's definitely coming to PC, and they've breached some agreement.
Can you let me finish? I was super pissed off about this because it's such an easy thing to avoid doing this, and then suddenly you've confused. Not only because there's a whole bunch of people that are now gone away from watching that showcase, and they haven't heard about that retraction. So there's people out there now thinking that it's coming out, so I'm planning on getting this, blah blah blah, and suddenly you've misinformed people in something that was so easy to not get wrong. It's so that's why it is a huge thing for me, because like the fact that if they retracted it later, I'd be like, okay, cool, they've had discussions and blah blah, and they realize no, we're going to retract that. It was the same day. Like at that point, you needed more checks and balances, or someone else needed to kind of proofread what they're allowed to say.
Yeah, look, like on that point around, should they have made this mistake? No. Like, I've worked on things where it's 150-page document, it's a legal document, it needs to all be correct, it's going out in public. And, I literally would go through every single word, read it out loud, prove where every single sentence comes from. Like, this is not that hard. They actually don't have much text in these trailers. So it's pretty easy to get it right.
Yeah.
So I give you that, right? It's just, for me, I don't know, maybe it's wrong, but I am like 99.999% confident it's going to come to PC. And to me, like, it's almost better to know that, because I think initially what they would have done is just saying it's coming as a PlayStation 5 exclusive. And then, people like you who are not going to get a PlayStation 5 would have been like, oh, damn, that's a bummer. But now it's going to come to PC.
But okay, let's talk about Demon Souls, because this is where
just like before we go on, because I just want to say a different note on Final Fantasy 16, and how you're talking about the combat. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you are a Final Fantasy expert, but and I know I keep mentioning this game, Octopath Traveler. Like, I just wish that they had a spin-off Final Fantasy branded series in the Octopath Traveler engine. Like, I would play the hell out of those games. Even if they just remade a lot of the old Final Fantasy games, like Final Fantasy VI in the Octopath Traveler engine, and, bring back just like the really traditional turn-based combat. Like, I would love that.
Yeah, it would be great. And I think that'd sell a decent amount, but Square struggle to get their big releases out enough that they probably would have. I don't know from a resource standpoint how they'd managed having more stuff out there. But the reason I wanted to get straight into Demon Souls is because we were talking about that topic. So about the whole, the showing up, it's coming to PC or whatever. The Demon Souls message was even weirder, because Demon Souls is a Sony property.
Yeah, that's weird. That's really
That's
weird.
the one that is like the weirder one, because exclusive something about other consoles. I can't remember the exact wording. I wish I had it in front of me, but that's a weird one, because nobody would ever expect that game to come to any other console. PC maybe, but I mean the original Demon Souls never came to PC. So
they are bringing a lot of things to PC though. So I think people are now assuming they're going to bring things to PC.
Yeah, but Demon Souls. So I know so much about this game that I've never played, right? Same Bloodborne.
And you're a huge Souls fan.
I am, but it's hard. It's horrible to say that and then say I haven't played probably one of the most important two of the most important titles, which is Demon Souls and Bloodborne. And again, I've mentioned before that it's simply because I'm not in that ecosystem at the moment. If they had PC ports, I definitely would play them.
If it was on Xbox, you would have played it.
So this is the remake by Bluepoint, and remake in the truest sense of the word. They've done such an incredible job with the visuals in this. The one thing,
and just on that, with Bluepoint, who is going to buy Bluepoint? Like, if I was Microsoft, I'd buy the hell out of Bluepoint, man. Like, why are they still independent? It makes no sense to me.
I have no idea.
Because they just do magic. Like, they seem to be, like, in the industry, just by far the best porters, remaster creation team out there. Like, they just kill it. And maybe I can't believe they're free agents still. It's crazy.
Maybe they feel that it's easier to operate in the current setup as opposed to, or well, I don't know. Like my assumption is something's working for them in that arrangement. But
Mm.
with Demon Souls, so as I said, like I know a lot about this game considering I've never played it. And the one thing that it looks amazing. I'm so glad this is happening. First of all, the servers aren't even live for the original Demon Souls anymore. So I think for anyone that wants to do the PvP and the co-op and everything, then it's great to obviously have a new version that's
Yeah.
coming out. But what I'm really hoping is that this gameplay trailer, which is basically the tutorial of Demon Souls, I'm hoping it didn't have a HUD, right, which was obvious. So there was obviously it was scripted or set up for this presentation. I'm just really hoping the camera was made more cinematic for that specific purpose, because the camera is very different than the Souls style camera, especially Demon Souls. So that was the one thing that kind of just looked unnatural to me. I'm all for change in the sense that if it's end up going to be, I guess, beneficial for the game overall. I just hope that it still has that, I guess, that feel of the original and for people that are fans of it. But it looks amazing. It's awesome that's a launch title. To me, that is if I was getting PS5, that would be the one game I'd be buying, no doubt about it. So that's awesome. And I don't know, as someone that's hasn't really dipped their toes into GOT, what does this game kind of look like to you?
In terms of what?
Well, what's the impression you're getting of this game?
Oh, it looks awesome. Yeah, on the camera, I read it about that prior. That is going to be the camera. Like, it is. They've taken a different approach, which, like a lot of these folk who love the Souls games, and I get it, because there's certain games that I'm really into, or certain genres like Metroidvanias. It's like you kind of expect something, and if it's way outside of that, it can really throw you. I know a lot of people have been thrown by the Mario 3D All Stars collection, where they've inversed the controls for Sunshine, and then also inversed the camera for 64. So it's like, it throws people, especially if you play them a lot. But outside of that, like, yeah, this is a game that I would definitely play. Like, I'm, as part of the some other year, I've forgotten what am I doing?
Game of some other year.
Game. That's why I got it wrong with it, because I keep on saying in my mind game of the some other year. So I'm trying not to say that, and I said the whole thing wrong. Game of some other year. As part of that, we're going to go through Dark Souls. So I'm super looking forward to that. But yeah, Demon Souls, it looks really, really sick. Like, and it just looks like a really great game. Like, it looks super, super polished, and it's I'm going to bring up Mario 3D All Stars collection again. I mean, I think for a lot of people, they were hoping for a remake like this, like where you're taking those base games and maybe throw in Odyssey's engine, also Mario Odyssey's engine, and build it out that way, or do something like that. So, and I get that. I don't think you can get away with it as much on a PS3 game and then bringing it to PS5 without absolutely remastering it. I just don't think that would fly, because those games are almost trying to be a bit cutting edge in those days, but now they look a little bit dated for most people. But yeah, like, so yeah, like, to respond to your question, yeah, it looks really cool. It looks really, really neat.
One thing I guess I didn't mention as well is what's fantastic about this is that Demon Souls is always that underappreciated gem. It got a lot of critical acclaim when it came out, but it also a lot of people weren't accustomed to, like, it pushed a lot of people back. Like, there's stories you hear about of, I forget the name of the old, I guess, one of the Sony presidents, maybe he's president of the American division, kind of, almost just saying, "Oh, this game's horrible, blah blah blah. Why would we, bring this across and things like that?" And then turning around completely on that, because they're games that kind of like they immediately, like, it changed it was like a trendsetter at the time. But
Yeah,
it wasn't until Dark Souls that the series really picked up, I guess, the mainstream appeal. So what's great about this is that it's getting that push. It's obviously a launch title, which is always going to help, because as people are wanting to get games from the platform. So it's a chance for this game to get the recognition it deserves in with a really, really pretty makeover. So that's what I think is great about it.
Yeah, and it's pretty incredible, the whole story with Dark Souls and Demon Souls as well. Like, Sony had an opportunity to lock in that series and effectively not even have a Dark Souls available, if that makes sense. Like, the whole story of it, like, they kind of ended up doing it because of just a lack of love from Sony and Sony's relative disinterest to really invest in the series, which, you always look at these sliding doors moments and just imagine, like, Demon Souls is the equivalent of Dark Souls now, and it's a Sony only IP. Like, geez, like that's crazy when you think about it like that. But yeah, like I'm struggling to think of an example, but I totally get what you're saying. It's almost like a bit unfair to Demon Souls. Like, people talk about Souls-like games as if Dark Souls is the first game in that kind of whole genre, and I guess off the top of my head, it's a little bit like Doom, where, I'm talking about like 93 Doom, the original Doom, where, everyone's like, oh, it's a Doom killer or a Doom clone or like things that have copied Doom. But there were so many games predating Doom that pretty much had all the elements that just didn't have it in a package that clicked with people and just kind of exploded. And yeah, you do feel bad for those games that were there beforehand. And it's like, well, hang on a second. They kind of did everything that one did, but maybe not as polished, or, just the setting wasn't quite exactly right, that then clicked with people. And sometimes you make a game and then you go, and same as movies and everything, and you go, oh, there's just all these things you do a little bit differently, and once they all add up, it sort of makes a bit of a masterpiece. So no, this is cool. This is so compelling, man, like, as a launch title, compared to when I just kind of trying to be independent, comparing the lineup of Xbox Series X/S and PlayStation 5. And like, this one is a big heavy hitter to me in terms of being a launch title.
100%.
Which they didn't confirm in the actual showcase.
I know, it's ridiculous. Why would you not put that in? Oh,
it was super odd. I mean, like, in the next segment, we'll go through the overall thoughts on the showcase. And there's a bunch of stuff that they didn't confirm in the showcase that I think is pretty critical. And they confirmed in interviews afterwards. It's very odd, like, how they did all of that.
But they closed the presentation off with essentially a logo teaser of essentially the next God of War. And they just had the title there. Just had the title there as Ragnarok.
Yeah,
and it's I mean, that's huge. They obviously didn't have a big fancy trailer for it, but I think they needed to kind of really just push those buttons of people looking for that. They had Final Fantasy 16, was a huge announcement, but is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. So they had this second big hitter, which is the next God of War. So
yeah, like, and it was almost like, it reminded me of Metroid Prime 4 in terms of just being, here's a logo, and then I saw it said 2021. I was like, what? Like, I actually had to go back and check that, because I was like, how's it 2021 and there's no footage or like anything on it? Like, I don't know. I guess maybe it's just a teaser and it's a bit of a marketing campaign. I think there are a lot of cynical people, more cynical than me, who are like, this is not going to be 2021. This is going to be 2022, and they're going to push it back next year, which might happen. But yeah, this was probably one of the biggest announcements in the showcase.
I'm not sure if they've ever delayed a God of War title. I could be completely wrong on that, but I think if you're skeptical of that, just check that, see if they have a history of delaying. I know obviously the pandemic changes everything, but it would have, like, the studios have had time to adjust their timelines at this point based on the fact that this has been going on for over half a year now. So I don't think they would have put that there without knowing they couldn't deliver. But who knows?
Yeah, and look, it's not something that I think that they're not going to be able to deliver. It's just, that's kind of a lot of people's reaction on it. So no, I think that's really sick, man. Like, when you look at the lineup for the PlayStation 5, and then you add in a God of War, a God of Wars, as I said earlier, that's massive, because that is a genuine, like, 10 out of 10 potential game. And then you've got a bunch of others that are coming out at launch as well. It is pretty killer. And I guess that's a good sort of, segue into our overall thoughts for the showcase. And just, confirming a bit of other news that I think should have been in the showcase but wasn't. But, just as taking a step back, the showcase, and want to get your thoughts on, did you think it was an effective showcase, and how did it compare to, Xbox and even Nintendo's offerings of late?
Oh, it was a killer showcase. Any showcase where you announce the next mainline Final Fantasy game is killer, because that doesn't happen very often. And
true.
then to also have some great trailers, like the Spider-Man trailer was awesome. The Demon Souls, we've already mentioned that. That was a great trailer as well. Then to end it with God of War is like, this was awesome. Some of these announcements were like, hey, these are headline E3 announcements kind of stuff, in their big presentations. So, no, it was really good. And, I mean, there were a bunch of other things that they talked about, interestingly, and no Godfall in this showcase, or at least in the main showcase. It's like, I think they learned their lesson sometimes with that game, but that still is a launch
I was
game,
waiting
apparently.
for it. Honestly, I was waiting for it. I was like, wait, I was going to text you because I was watching it, and I'm like, are they going to talk about Godfall? It's like the grandma thing in the Ubisoft.
It'd be cool for them to show Godfall if they're showing something different, like, oh, this is you actually... Yes. This is like the hub world, or this is like the story. Like, what's the story of the game? Like, maybe it doesn't have one. But the point is, like, they haven't shown us anything else other than just, here's the combat. Here's the combat. Is there anything else? But yeah, we also learned some other stuff that I don't know if you're about to go through.
So like
post showcase as well.
Yeah, and as I said, that there were, a lot of things that just seemed like they should have been in the showcase, even if they had handled it really quick. The whole showcase, as you said, it started with Final Fantasy 16, and then it ran through a lot of the games, and it was back-ended by, okay, we know you're waiting for this. Here's the price. Made it really clean and simple and minimalistic. Here's the price. Here's the release date. This is what's happening. And then, here's one last thing, which was the God of War announcement. But so many of these other things, like, everyone's been talking about, when are they going to confirm it or have a statement? Like, number one, can you play PS1, PS2, PS3 games on it? That's now been confirmed, no. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, that Jim Ryan in that interview with Famitsu and a whole other outlets like GameIndustry.biz and a few others, is essentially just saying, with all the tech that went into the DualSense and a few other things, they just kind of, from a hardware perspective, didn't have the budget to really focus in on PS1, PS2, PS3. I think for me, the biggest problem is the PS3, because the architecture is so different, the whole cell architecture. It's just such a nightmare for them to try to be able to make it compatible, that it then creates a gap where, and they tried to do this with the PS4. They could kind of get stuff on the PS1, PS2, but not PS3, but it just feels a bit odd if you can play PS1 and PS2, but not PS3. So they've confirmed that that's not working. And then they also said that the PlayStation 5's 99% compatible with PS4 titles. That's also really weird. I assume that that's just like some of the games that had physical devices or things that are, edge cases from a PS4 perspective, and they won't work.
Yeah, it kind of covers them for that. That 1%. There might be a game that just will not work. Outside of the needing peripherals and stuff. So it covers them there.
Yeah.
To say 100%, like, even Microsoft's not said that.
Well, and that's the thing. I think maybe it's just they're trying to cover themselves from a negative article or something like that. But I think if you're 99%, you pretty much can just say you're backwards compatible with PS4. Because I think if it's just a few edge cases, people aren't really going to work up about that. It's more if I look at the top 100 selling games, do they work? And if they all work and there's a quirk here or there, I don't think anyone's really going to be fussed about it. But they've almost made it seem like it's not compatible historically. Because, they had Mark Cerny had the whole commentary around the top 100 games are going to, they should work. And then people are like, well, wait, does that mean all the rest of the games weren't? So it's good that at least they've just put a line through it. PS4, pretty much any title works on PS4. It's going to work on PS5, PS1, PS2, PS3. Hey, you got to go buy a PS3. And you can get the launch PS3s that have the physical emulators on them. So for PS1 and PS2. So that's an option for some people as well. A lot of people I know take advantage of that. The other one was just around the launch titles. Like they weren't really clear on what the launch titles were for the PS5, which was really odd. And then they confirmed it afterwards. So just quickly running through of the ones we know, and this could be added to quite quickly. So Astro's Playroom, which is really, really sick. Like Astrobot, like I'm really keen to play that in VR one day. And this is like a 3D platformer version, so not a VR one, but it's very associated with DualSense. So, and that's going to be pack-in, like a very old school method, pack-in for every single PS5. Again, we're not sure if that's permanent or just in the sort of launch series of the PS5s. Demon Souls, as we just referred to, Destruction All-Stars, Godfall, Just Dance 2021, Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Sackboy, Big Adventure. So they're the ones that I know are confirmed right now. And again, they might, add more games as time goes on. I know that there's like lots of third-party games that are also going to be at launch. So things like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So yeah, there's going to be a bunch of games that you'd expect if they're launching as a sort of cross-platform on Xbox. They should be at launch with the PS5 as well.
And you know what? On that Valhalla note, if there was any game, as weird as it is, that would get me to get a new console, it's probably that one. Just simply because I really want to play that game. It's like, oh man, I'll be playing it on the last gen. It's not going to run as well.
It's coming on PC, right?
Yeah, but to me, their console. It's a weird thing. Like I always play those games on console, so it would feel maybe it's something to consider, but. I'd probably want to play it on the Xbox ecosystem for obvious reasons.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well,
at least with that game, they've confirmed that when you do get a Series X, which I know you will, it will be a free upgrade to Series X. So that's been confirmed. And just on that sort of, cross-gen conversation, something that I thought was bizarre is, Jim Ryan, a whole bunch of Sony people have been very adamant that, literally their quote, "We believe in generations," and that was the commentary of Xbox's strategy of the first 18 months. You won't likely see many first party Xbox Series X/S exclusives. Whereas, Sony are kind of alluding, they didn't confirm, but they alluded that, no, we believe in generation. There's going to be PS5 exclusives. And then after the event, and also, by the way, after a lot of people had pre-ordered the PS5, they confirmed that Spider-Man Miles Morales, which, by the way, is like a huge game for a lot of people, Sackboy, Horizon Forbidden West, and a whole other host of games are actually coming to PS4. And then not only that, like almost all of them will have free upgrades to the PS5. And I thought that was a bit of a dodgy move. Because, a lot of these people were like, hey, this is the only place I'm going to be able to play this Miles Morales game. And now, actually, that's not right. And also, when you do upgrade eventually, you'll get the game for free. So I don't know. I thought it was a really dodgy move from them. I was really surprised, actually.
I think you keep trying to say Rick Moranis at the same time as you're saying Miles Morales.
I know. I don't know. I just like the name always throws me, man. And then the other one was that we still haven't seen the UI, but they've confirmed that they will be showing it off somewhat shortly. And then there's a remaster of Spider-Man coming with all the DLC to PS5.
That's the weirdest thing to me because it's like, man, like that just feels a weird thing to have like announced before you've even launched the next one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it's also really muddied the waters because what they've done is with the Miles Morales game, did I say it right this time?
Yes.
If you buy the Ultimate Edition, you will have the ability to get the digital version of the Spider-Man remaster when it comes out. And then everyone's now going, well, wait a second. I already have Spider-Man on PS4. Can't I get that for free? And they haven't, as far as I've seen, maybe this has changed, but they haven't confirmed one way or the other, like whether you're going to be able to get a free upgrade. And then just the final thing for me is just, they're pretty much confirmed that they're going to start charging $70 US. And, we're going to feel that in Australia as well, for these really large games. So, I think like Ragnarok, like all those type of games, they're going to start charging $70, which is kind of like, felt like it was coming for a long time. It's probably been pushed down from a pricing perspective post GFC anyway for a long period of time. So that's not a shock to me, but it is hard for a lot of people because it just means maybe that's one less game that they can get a year.
Yeah, at this point, I think it's just probably wise to accept it, unfortunately. It's just the way things are going.
Yeah. So look, for me, I thought it was a 10 out of 10 showcase. Like, not that I loved everything that it was in there, but it was so good that actually, and I think we're pretty similar in this way that, I don't think it's very logical to buy a console at launch. Now, if you're doing a gaming podcast, you might want to think about it, but, I don't think it's super logical, and I'd rather just go, okay, I'll even wait for the next iteration, like the PS5 Pro, whatever it's going to be called, before I jump in. And, there's a whole suite of games that come with it at that point. But I must admit, when I watched the showcase, it did make me go, oh, I almost feel like buying one of these PS5s. I came close. So I'm not shocked at the reaction. And I think just looking, at lots of different data points, people surveyed on Twitter, the buzz, the likes, the amount of views, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, dude. To me, there's nothing that indicates that, this generation, we don't know the real numbers, but it feels like for every 3 PlayStation 4s that were sold, there was 1 Xbox One sold. With everything that's sort of happened and all the sort of, those data points that I'm talking about, there's nothing to indicate to me that there's going to be a breakaway from that. It feels like, there's going to be similar sales numbers. It's not going to be on par like it was with the 360 and the PlayStation 3. And I don't know, man. I don't know what that means for Microsoft in the long run. Are they going to be able to sustain a console that is third run? Behind PlayStation and Nintendo? I don't know if that's going to work.
Oh, and honestly, it doesn't actually, I don't even like thinking about it because it's so irrelevant to my own personal enjoyment of playing video games. How much a console
if they don't
does
exist. No, but if it doesn't exist, it's going to impact you.
Yeah, but I let other people worry about that. Honestly, this is completely honestly, I actually don't care about if one console sells more than another. I care about obviously being able to play the games that I have and things like that. And
yeah.
If Xbox goes away with the dodo because they don't sell enough this generation, well, then I'll get a PlayStation or I'll just play stuff on PC. It doesn't worry me, honestly. It never has. Even there's a documentary coming out soon about the console wars, Sega and Nintendo. Even back then, you're a kid, so you had the console you had, and I was glad I had a Super Nintendo, but. I would have loved the Genesis, it didn't worry me. I just
Mega Drive for us.
Yeah, and it's obviously beneficial for us to, to have these viewpoints to talk about this. But I'm kind of the person that I'm well, let's just see how it goes. I like to see things play out, but it doesn't really worry me that much. I will say that got nothing to do with me being oh, I own an Xbox. I don't care if I know stuff. I wouldn't care. It wouldn't matter if I had a PlayStation either. It's just
no. I know that back in the day when 360 was kind of on top of the PS3. It's not like you cared one way or the other. It was more, I guess my question was more around: is it concerning? Hey, there might not be a Xbox, whatever the next one's going to be called. Terrible title, insert here. But yeah, it sounds like you're just a bit well, if it happens, it happens, and I'll just switch. It's not like the games are going to go away. So
exactly, yeah.
No, fair enough. No, so a great event. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm actually glad that they, were able to have the sway and get the big heavy hitters like the Final Fantasies and the God of War announcements, and yeah, it was a great event. And on reflection, I think in the next console launch, I wouldn't even be surprised if they wait a bit longer to announce some of these bigger things because it hasn't seemed to impact the sales at all, and just gave them more time to prepare and really get that price exactly what they want it to be. And moving into our next segment around another company with an interesting showcase, Nintendo Direct Mini. So we had a partner showcase this week. Again, coming out of the blue. There were some rumors that there was going to be another direct. I'm not sure if they're talking about this or maybe a larger direct. But yeah, like as we normally do, starting with the biggest thing from this event, which was really the announcement of 2 major new games. So Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Stories 2. So I thought this was really cool. And, I think a lot of people have kind of, I guess with the focus on Monster Hunter World and everything that series has done and the quality of life improvements. And that's really almost like a bit of a spin-off of Monster Hunter itself, have kind of forgotten about the traditional Monster Hunter games. And these games, it's a massive franchise. Like, Nintendo had worked with Capcom so much on these games, and even, kind of really like pushing these games as part of the 3DS and the new 3DS. So yeah, I guess this was quite overdue in a way, but we are looking at a traditional Monster Hunter game, and this one on the Switch. So coming out on March 26, 2021. Have you ever played these Monster Hunter games?
So I put a lot of time in Monster Hunter World. I won't say I did everything I wanted to do. I was at the point where I was thinking about wrapping up some of the stuff and then moving to the Iceborne content. So I essentially got up to where I was working on some of the Master Rank stuff. And I loved my time in Monster Hunter World. Because I haven't played the older ones, I've coming into it with some of those quality of life we're talking about. I imagine that depending on what they do and don't bring across, it might be jarring for some people that are starting with Monster Hunter World to go back to, I guess, maybe some of the more traditional systems. But from the looks of it, this is adding a whole lot more that World doesn't have. So this has a lot more vertical movement than any Monster Hunter World, I believe. A lot more around the acrobatic.
Any Monster Hunter?
Yeah, any Monster Hunter. So like running up mountains and things like that. That's something that you're doing in the other games. If there was one particular game, then obviously feel free to call us out in the comments. But the thing with this is there was, a lot more about, I guess, the acrobatics, of actually getting onto the monsters. Some of that stuff was definitely there for some weapon types, and they added, in Iceborne, like a grappling hook shot thing that you could get onto the monster's back a lot easier. Seems like they're just going ham on that, and they're making this kind of just its own kind of unique thing in a lot of ways. Looks cool. Anyone that says, it looks a bit rough or whatever compared to World, well, first of all, not only is it on the Switch, but also go and take a look at the last game that was on the Switch. I can't remember the exact name of it, but
Generations.
Yeah, this is definitely a big jump up from that. So it's great to get a full-fledged new Monster Hunter title on the Switch. And I've heard really great things about the next game as well, or at least the first of the next, the sequel, the one that this was the sequel to.
Story sequel, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to get a way to say it without still allowing you to say Monster Hunter Stories 2, but we're past that point.
Yeah, and before we move on to that, like Rise, it's kind of funny because Monster Hunter became a, handheld series, and that's where the mainline series was. And, I don't know why I care about this stuff, but I really care about, what is the main series versus what's the spin-off series versus, what do all these other things mean? And, at least from people's, perspective on, what they're saying, they're actually saying Monster Hunter World is now the mainline series. So, it started with the PS2 with Monster Hunter and eventually landed on the 3DS with Monster Hunter 4. But yeah, now, at least when I'm looking at it, it looks like they're saying World is the continuation. So it's almost like Monster Hunter 5 in that perspective.
It's really quite arbitrary, though. I mean, they're just...
I know, I care about this. I don't know why. and I felt like Rise, to me, was kind of the next in the mainline series. But, it kind of is. Again, it's all semantics and what you think is canon. And by the way, canon can change. But I don't, dude, I'm actually seriously thinking about picking up this game. And, I'm a very pro Switch gamer just because it really matches my lifestyle, being able to play a game and then just, put it into sleep any stage and then jump right back into it instantly. That's hugely appealing to me as a dad. So I don't know. I'm kind of looking at it. I'm thinking I might get this game. The only thing is, I think in Australia, these games have always been really highly priced.
I'll just say about that whole pick up and play, put to sleep. I don't know if that's really Monster Hunter though. Like when you're out on a hunt, like that stuff can sometimes take a while. Depending, some of
Yeah,
those
but it's
monsters.
not online, right?
Well, there is co-op, but you don't have to do it co-op. But the idea is,
Yeah.
I'm just going to put this to sleep, unless, like, I could be wrong about the version they put to Switch previously, but the game's not. I'm saying it's not like I'm gonna. It's not as put to sleep as you think. That's all. It's like a game where you have to kind of put like at least half an hour into it each run or something.
Mm.
From my experience with World, anyway, you can
Yeah.
definitely
I mean,
when you get up to the like later on and you're super powerful and you can clear some of the battles like in 5-10 minutes, definitely. But I'm just saying, just maybe keep in mind that there's times when, especially if you start dabbling in the co-op, where that stuff can sometimes sink a bit of time in.
yeah. Look, I think everyone's different. Like, I'm really good at, like, even if I'm in the middle of a battle on the Switch, I'm more than happy to just press the power button, bang, go do whatever, and then pick it up 5 hours later and just get right back into it. Like, that's never bothered me at all. And it's honestly one of the best features of the Switch. It's almost like a killer feature for me that, if you're playing an online game, that's totally different. But a game like this, I can just pause at any time. It doesn't matter. And then just get back straight into it. I'm just wired like that.
I'm just not sure how that works with this, so I'll just say maybe just.
But what do you mean? But like, I just press the power button and then I just press it again and it'll turn on.
Yeah, I'm just saying maybe just do a bit of research on that before you assume it's going to work exactly like that. It might actually cancel.
But every Switch game has to work like that. Apart from the online games, every single Switch game has to work like that. It's a part of publishing a game on the Switch.
But it could, for instance, if you power button and come back in, it could have ended your hunt or something, and then you've.
Nah, not if it's only if it's online.
Okay, I'll just say do some research and look into it first. That's all. So.
No, I don't know if I've ever heard of a single player game doing that on the Switch. Like, I think it's literally part of the way the game, like, if you want to publish a single player, like a non-online game, like, you have to do it like that. I'm just trying to think. Animal Crossing is probably the only one that I can think of.
Okay, I'm just giving you a heads up. Maybe just check out and confirm that's the case. That's all.
Yeah, no. It's a good point. Yeah, because like I said, the only game that I can think of is Animal Crossing. That if you do that, it really screws up with the game.
I guess it also.
I can't think of any other game.
I will say it also depends as well if because you can with World at least you can create an online session even if you're the only person in it, so you can get things like the daily challenges and the rewards for the day. And in that case, I've never tried, for instance, being in the middle of a hunt and just like putting my Xbox to sleep and coming back and seeing what happens, because the hunts generally have time limits and things. So I'm just wondering if at that point it just goes, you left the hunt or something when you come back on. So I'm not sure how that would work on there, but anyway, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I do know that like the whole sleep mode for Switch is designed differently than PS4 and Xbox One, like in terms of what a port has to comply with. Because I know that even like Doom, when it released initially, they weren't complying with what they needed to, and they actually needed to update the game to be able to, so you could just press the power button and put it into sleep mode. But I will check that, because if I can't do that, I won't pick up this game. That's like black and white for me. Because like the amount of times I just need to like pause a game is just huge as a dad.
Yeah, there's no traditional pause feature, at least in World, and I'd assume it's not the case for the other ones. So you just can't pause at any time. So.
Okay, interesting. So
check it out.
And I mean, like,
I just want to say about that, like, I don't want that to push you away. Like, I'm super keen on this game as well. I reckon this is a game I'd love to always play co-op in these games, whether or not that was World or not. And they're the kind of games that are made to be more fun with more people. So,
okay. Well, if you pick it up, I'll definitely pick it up then.
Cool.
And then the other Monster Hunter announcement, which was kind of like surprising that they had these double announcements, is Monster Hunter Stories 2. So this is a spin-off of the original that came to the 3DS, and kind of a bit of a sleeper hit on the 3DS, and very, very well regarded game. It did sell okay, but not in the numbers that Monster Hunter traditionally sells, which is literally in the sort of 8 to 10 million. mark. I think this is like sub 1 million from memory Monster Hunter stories. So I think with the Switch, and given that stories came out like relatively late in the life cycle of the 3DS, just having the audience for the Switch itself might sort of give this a bit more love. And it's a bit of a different game. You're assuming the role of the rider with the monsters. Like it's kind of interesting. The only thing that kind of made me kind of a bit surprised was that given that Monster Hunter Rise is coming out, and I know they're different games, but still for a lot of folk, it's like Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter Rise is coming out in like late March next year. And this is penned in, I think what they've said is like essentially winter for Australia. So it's like Q2, Q3 2021, which feels very close to when Monster Hunter Rise is coming out, don't you think?
Yeah, but they're so different. And I think
but just a naive person's not going to know the difference between these games.
But honestly, I think most of the people, I think at this point, a lot of the people buying these games are people that probably know quite a bit about the series already or have heard about it around because World was such a hit. I don't think there's any problem there. Like if you've got a kid that can only have one or the other, then obviously there's an impact there. And there's going to be times when that definitely happens. This looks cool. I almost wish the visual style of this was the visual style of Rise because it looked nicer. Like because Rise is a bit more kind of trying to be a little bit more realistic in its character models and things, but it's let's just say you look at that versus World and it definitely looks a lot rougher. Stories 2 has that stylized look to it. I'm like, man, I'd actually like to play Monster Hunter game that looks like that. But
yeah, that would actually have been interesting if they'd gone down that path. Because, we are, neither of us, like, it's a really weird one to say this because I get very obsessed about frame rate more than anything else. And then also low input lag and stuff like that. But I've never really been bothered by the Switch or like being underpowered. And, I'm more than happy to say Monster Hunter Rise, a game that I'm interested in getting, to me, it kind of looks like a really good PS3 game. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like, as if Monster Hunter was going to PS3. That's what it kind of looks like to me, like in the style that they'd be going for with that.
Yeah, there were the moments in that Rise trailer that, looked a bit rough on the frame rate, but the reason I'm not worried is because they have a history of making these for handhelds. So and I say that, obviously Switch is a hybrid console, but essentially at this point, when you're talking about Monster Hunter, it's like continuation of the handheld version of the Monster Hunter games, so.
Yeah. And it is a really good point you make, though. Like, yeah, if they'd gone for more that cel-shaded sort of look for the mainline series, again, they probably couldn't do Monster Hunter Stories 2 if they did that, just because, it would really look the same. But it would actually be pretty cool if it looked like that. Like, that would have probably been a smart way to go about it. And one thing out of this Monster Hunter Direct, and very much the most important thing out of this Monster Hunter Direct, more Amiibo is being announced.
The most
important. I'd say I'm probably like 50-50 because I do have a lot of games on the Switch. Like, it's getting embarrassing where on my shelf, I now need to go to the next level on my shelf, my IKEA shelf. Like, that's how many games I have. It's really crazy. And I still have a lot of games that I need to get through. So I'm probably like a 50-50 whether I'll get Monster Hunter Rise early on when it comes out. Maybe eventually it's probably a much higher chance. But with the Monster Hunter Amiibo, so there's 3 Amiibos that were confirmed to come out with Monster Hunter Rise. So we have the dog friend and, a few other folk, and then also the monster that is the key monster, the cover art monster is going to have an Amiibo. I'm 100% chance of getting the Amiibo. So there's a very high possibility I'll have the Amiibo and I won't have the game.
It's actually funny.
Which is not that.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I'll say
no, go on.
One of the Amiibos is a Pelican, and just reminded me that in Monster Hunter World, I named the Pelican after one of our friends. And then I sent him a screenshot, and I'm like, I don't know if he appreciated it or kind of just like was like, okay. I'm like, oh, I thought that was pretty funny.
You're a secret furry or something. So yeah. I was super amped about this. Like when I saw this announcement, I was like, sweet. And it also makes me go, wow. Like right now, there are 7 Amiibo that have been announced and that are coming out and that aren't out yet. So it does make me laugh when at the start of the year, a lot of pundits sort of had the prediction that Amiibo were going to die this year. And then, we're at a point like late in the year where you've got 7 more Amiibo coming that haven't even come out yet. So I'm picking up a couple next week, which are Joker and Hero for Smash. So they're coming out next week. Hint, hint, if you're, given that you're a big Hero player. These are pumped. And I'm very pumped about this. And then like the thing that I'm really praying for, and I know this is not going to happen, but with the Monster Hunter Stories game that came out on 3DS, in Japan only, they created 6 Amiibo for that game.
6?
And these are 6. And these are like some of the most sought after Amiibo because they were very... It just it's a bit different if if you're in Australia or in America, go to GameSpot, they're there. Oh, this looks like a cute little figure, sweet. I'll pick this up, right? No sweat. But because it's like Japan only, you have to order it in. It's really tricky. It's just like a pain, right? They didn't make many of them. They sort of, you have to order it from overseas through special, vendors and everything like that. These are so hard to get. So an Amiibo in Australia is like about, at the time it was like $18, $12 in the States. I just sent you a link through what people are selling Naviro, which is one of the most sought after Amiibo. It's insane. So I don't know if you've clicked the link, but
it's loading now.
Or maybe I'll let you say what the price is.
Okay. Huh. Oh, actually.
And do you see the price?
Sheesh. $3.99. Man, all right. Can I ask you a question?
$400 for something that goes for like $20 in the store.
So can I ask you a question? Like, I'm certainly, like we've talked about, like, I understand doing things just because you like doing it and it doesn't really have much of an impact or, like value outside of, I like doing this thing. Like, I like collecting.
Yeah, you definitely can't judge. You definitely can't judge.
But what is like 75-year-old integot thinking when he walks into his Amiibo room and there's like 600 Amiibos in there at that point? What are you doing at that age? Like, what are you going to do with them?
Look, there's a couple of things. Like, we both grew up in a similar situation. We're not like upper class or anything like that. Let's just say, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like we were, poverty or anything like that, but we certainly weren't on the other side of that either. So that's one element. There's one element that, I'm pretty frugal in general.
I know, 50,
and I don't have any
$50,
crazy.
$50 for the digital PlayStation 5 or whatever. No, Xbox Series S. Yeah.
I know, it's like I'm very frugal, right? And I don't like wasting money in general. And I don't have any crazy habits. I don't drink at all. I haven't drank for like a couple of years, so I don't spend any money on that. I don't smoke at all. I don't gamble that much at all. Like, I have a very strict limit. So there's nothing I'm really like going crazy splurging on, number one. Number two, this is taking way back, but in the 90s, probably when, both of us, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, we didn't have that much money. And I have to say, there's so many games that I played illegally, like through emulation, and mostly Nintendo games. And I played through all these games. I never owned them. And I kind of felt guilty about that. I've always felt like a bit guilty about that. And in a weird way, I've got this weird sense, like, where it's like, I feel like squaring up, right? So initially I bought a bunch of Amiibo, not a lot, but like, 10 or something like that. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm squaring up with Nintendo.
Just 10 of these things.
No, when I say 10, it was 10 over the course of like 4 months or something like that.
Okay. I thought you were
because, there's a lot of Nintendo, and I'm probably, not even probably, I'm like predominantly a Nintendo fan, so like I had like a Zelda one, Mario, and it's just kind of building it out a little bit, like all the, Metroid, sweet, like I'm a huge Metroid fan. So, you start to build up, and you can easily name 10 Nintendo franchise characters that, if you love these franchises, you're like, yeah, sure, I'm happy to buy this. And honestly, my head was just a bit like, I feel like I'm squaring up a bit because I've ripped off Nintendo historically. Now they're ripping me off a bit. We're about getting even, right? And then I think for one of my birthdays, my wife, because they had like some sale at Big W where they were clearing out the Amiibo, she bought, like, no joke, like 25 Amiibo. And I think she bought them for like $5 each or something like that, or $6 each.
Is she regretting that decision now?
When she bought it, I was so pissed off because once she bought it, my head, because I am a perfectionist and a completionist, like deep down, and I'd really work hard to like get away from that. So like, you know, I was like, I don't want to collect these things. I don't collect anything really. Like there's nothing I have a collection of because I know what I'm like. I'll just start going nuts. It's like the X-Men trading cards, you know, back in the 90s, the Fleur ones or whatever they're called. Like I could get really crazy about that stuff. So I have to really force myself not to. So when she did that, I started going, oh my God, now I've got to work out which ones we don't have. And then I started going, okay, I'm going to get like one of the characters, but I'm not going to get two of the same character. Like that's crazy. And then, yeah, that went down. And then I got to a point where I was like, oh my God, like I have not even the majority of these Amiibos. I have like, you know, 70, 80% of the Amiibos that are available. So I'm like, oh God, now I have to just start collecting every single one. So I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's honestly like that squaring up was a huge part of it for me, that I felt like I've ripped them off so much historically. You know, like I had like a DS and I never bought a game for the DS because I hacked it. Like, and I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I just didn't have the money. And like I was, you know, I didn't have the money. I didn't need to do it, but that's what I did. So then I felt like, oh, you know, I'm kind of like getting back. You know what I mean? Because they make good money on these things. It's not like they're a bit of plastic. That's like $20. Like they're making good money on these things. So yeah, that was part of it. And now it's just a compulsion. Like I'm more than happy to say it's a compulsion. It's like if I see it, if there's something I don't have, I'll just buy it like instantly. You know, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I try not to think about it too much, to be honest.
So, integot, kindly tell me where the Amiibo touched you. This is like your therapy
in
session.
my heart. In my heart.
Like your therapy
in my heart. Well, I'll cover this as a whole segment of what I'm doing, but I'm actually planning to open them all up because most of mine are in boxes still. But because I have so many,
don't do it. Because then you can.
No, because like
you're sick of them.
But I don't think I ever will, to be honest. Because I'm not like that. I don't throw out things like that I have attachment to. So I've still got heaps of stuff from when I was a kid that I see. And like there's even He-Man toys that now my son plays with that I used to play with when I was a little kid, which is pretty cool. But yeah, stuff like that I won't throw out.
I reckon you make a mistake if you're opening them with that many of them, but
why? But why? Like what? Like
you do you? Because the point is collecting.
No, but what?
If you're collecting them, it makes sense to kind of keep them in, you know, the best possible state that collectors keep things. That's all.
No, but so when I say collecting it, it's like I want them all. But it's not like I want to keep them in like shrink paper wrap and like, you know, like those crazy people who like have the toys and they're like, oh, don't play with the toys. Like Gord, you know, my son plays with the Amiibo. And I don't know, for me it's cool, man, because he actually walks around and he knows the characters now. He's only 3 and he goes, Mario or Luigi or like Donkey Kong. He actually recognizes it like when we're walking around the store. So, you know, like, I'm fine with that. To me, the boxes compared to the size of the figures, it's just crazy differential that it's just taking up so much room having all of these boxed Amiibos. And for whatever reason, for me, I'm way more comfortable opening them all up and, you know, just having them on display. And that's what I want to cover, just like my thoughts around how I'm going to display it and what, like how that's shaping up. So yeah, I don't know. It's really crazy. Like I don't deny it's crazy. Like when I only had like a dozen, I was more than happy not to get any more. But then there was some tipping point. I think it was, when my wife, not in a bad way, but when she bought a stack of them, I was like, oh man, I'm all in now. Like I can't get out of this craziness. Like I'll have like variations. Like I have, you know, Rob.
Yes.
Like from Smash.
Yeah.
There's 2 versions of the Rob Amiibo. So I have to have both of them, of course. There's a Famicom version and there's like the regular version. It's like insane. It's insane stuff, dude. Anyway, I'm sure we'll cover Amiibo again. And moving into our final part of the Nintendo Direct Mini. So the showcase overall. So like there were a lot of announcements, and some of them we already knew about. But I just wanted to cover some of the sort of newer ones or some of the stuff that we didn't know prior to it. So two things I just want to shout out: Ori and the Will o' the Wisps. That's actually out already at the time that you'll be listening to this. And I think the awesome thing is the team really cares about the performance of the game. There were a few issues with the first game, and they've confirmed that this game is going to run at 60 frames a second on the Switch. And there was a physical edition of this game and the first game that came out, and it got sold out like almost instantly. So yeah, look, I've actually played a bit of the first one, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. So it's just one of these ones where it just got to hit me at the right time to play. And I'll probably play the first one, but I'm super stoked that they have released both of these games on the Switch. And it's kind of surprising, to be honest, because it felt like it was a pretty good exclusive to have on the Xbox. And just the other sort of thing that I wanted to shout out that really stood out for me in the showcase was Fitness Boxing 2. And the first Fitness Boxing, it's genuinely really good game to play if you don't have Ring Fit, or it doesn't make sense for you to have Ring Fit. So it's cool that they're actually releasing the sequel to this. And I guess the benefit of this as well, you can always have this digital version on your console, and then as you take your Switch around, you don't need to take the Ring Fit ring if you're ever going on travel. Not that we'll be traveling very much at all. And then just the last thing, and I wanted to sort of ask you this as well.
I just want to talk about Fitness Boxing for 1 second.
Okay. You don't want to talk about Ori, but you want to talk about Fitness Boxing. Go on.
No. Were you watching this on the YouTube channel, Nintendo's YouTube channel?
Yeah, I always watched the Nintendo one. Why?
See, did you have the chat open when they were...
No, I always close the chat. Always close the chat.
And so, like, I opened it up. I opened it for this specifically. So they're
Why?
Boxing 2, and they're like, oh, new instructors, and they're like, blah blah blah, blah blah blah, and Karen. And I'm like, and I open the chat straight away, and it's just people just for the next 2 minutes just making memes about there being a Karen in Fitness Boxing 2. I just thought it was absolutely hilarious.
I always find it unfortunate when people have those kind of names.
I know. I it is really unfortunate for anyone named Karen that's now become that kind of, that's the word for people that are like, acting that way. But it was just...
It's such a negative context.
Oh, man. Just the chat when that came up was just... it just made me laugh so much. That's all I wanted.
That's funny because, and I guess I can say this. I don't know. I got to think about this. Maybe I'll edit it later. But where I work, there's a guy called Scott Morrison, which is the name of our Prime Minister in Australia. And I always feel bad for people who, they have something like that. Hey, it's just the most derivative thing is someone to mention it at the start of the conversation. It's like, oh, Scott Morrison, oh, you must be annoyed, hey, Prime Minister. It's like, oh, it's like the lamest thing ever. I feel so bad for the guy.
I used to go to primary school with a girl named Robin Hood.
But that's dumb though, because Robin Hood is that's like naming your kid Michael Jackson. I was like, that's stupid. Like, you already know that there's something out there, right?
She was everyone called her Bobby because it was like Bobby Hood, but her full name was Robin Hood. Like, oh my god, what are you doing, you parents? That's horrible.
Yeah, that's dumb. That's dumb. That's dumb. People don't think about these things enough.
Fitness Boxing 2, I guess it's cool.
No, look, it like I said, it's a very good exercise game if you don't have Ring Fit. And it's more portable than Ring Fit, so it's one of the cool advantages of having the Switch. And the last thing I just wanted to call out, and as I said, there's a lot of other announcements. I think most we already knew, or personally doesn't interest me, is I kind of actually expected a Monster Hunter Smash announcement in this Direct Mini, just given how many Monster Hunter games were released, and I don't know, I just got this feeling like there'll be a Monster Hunter character confirmed in Smash, just given the love that the series has for Monster Hunter and the close relationship between Nintendo and Capcom.
Yeah.
But were you kind of sensing that, or not really?
I didn't think about that at all until I saw your note in our run sheet. The thing for me is, it makes sense because there's already a Monster Hunter boss in Smash, so it's okay, well, that makes sense. But after seeing the Monster Hunter character that they put in Marvel vs. Capcom Ultimate, Infinite, I should say. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want a Monster Hunter character in, just like looking, because unless it's a specific character from, let's say, one of the games, right? Like it's an actual character. Trying to come up with, I guess, like, oh, this is what a hunter character represents, because like that game lives and dies on, or like basically you're choosing the weapon, and the entire move set changes depending on what weapon. Like it's like different button combos and everything. It's almost like completely different gameplay styles, and then having to create a character that kind of represents that stuff. I don't know how I feel about it, unless they go the route of, oh, you can swap between the weapons and suddenly you got different special moves and things. Like if they did that, then maybe. But
Yeah, I mean, for me on that, I don't want a Monster Hunter character in Smash, by the way. But I think just given the love for the series, it feels like it's inevitable. It's going to happen. But I'm totally at the same page as you. It doesn't just naturally fill you with millions of ideas. But then again, you know, the team behind Smash are probably the most creative in the industry about like translating a character like that into a fighting game. So I mean, if anyone's going to do it, I feel like they're going to do it the best. But yeah, like I said, you know, stuff like you know, Master Chief, Doomslayer, Minecraft Steve, like those ones just to me make so much more sense or more appealing as a character to be brought into the game. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of was watching it going, oh, I wonder if they're gonna, you know, have this at the end or something and just like blow people away. But nope, they didn't. And again, we still don't know the Smash characters. Like,
yeah,
this is getting crazy now.
I'll just say as well, it's super weird to see a John Romero game in like current day showcases. It's just something weird about that to me.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, Empire of Sin, not Empire of Sun. That's the that's the movie with that Spielberg made or whatever in your run sheet. But Empire of Sin is the John Romero game.
I like the shade that you're throwing at me.
But,
Keep going.
yeah, I don't know. It's just something weird about that. Like knowing that we kind of grew up playing Doom and stuff, and John Romero was always the Doom guy, and then Daikatana happened.
Yeah,
and it's just weird. But hey, good on him. You know.
Well, at the time, he was like, people don't understand this now, but at the time, he was the Doom guy, not John Carmack.
Yeah,
you know, he really was the guy. And then when he left after Quake, it like over time evolved to being like John Carmack. And I think everyone now, if you said, you know, name me one person synonymous with Doom, they'd probably say John Carmack.
Yeah,
more than they would say John Romero.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, no, it is weird to see, you know, that sort of in the showcase, Nintendo showcase, nonetheless. So do you want to talk about this esteemed gentleman who's leaving the industry?
Oh, I just realised I was meant to segue into the next segment, and then completely, I don't even have the column.
It was smooth.
There's like in our run sheet, there's a bit of inside knowledge here. There's like if I'm meant to present something, it's like coloured green, and I didn't I had moved across, so I couldn't even see it. Okay, so we've got a big famed video creator leaving the industry, Michel and from you know, famous for Rayman, Beyond Good and Evil.
From, you know,
famous for
go on.
Basically, the creator of Rayman, Beyond Good and Evil, working on the upcoming Wild, and obviously Beyond Good and Evil 2. Also responsible for the Rabbids, so that's you know, I guess the Rabbids.
Oh God,
the Rabbids
infamous.
Bit of I guess, you know, turnaround in you know, how people feel about them with the Mario game, whatever it was, the XCOM game.
Mario and Rabbids. Which, by the way, is a really, really good game. Like, I'd really recommend playing it.
It's called like Kingdom Battles, and I just couldn't remember the whole thing, that's all. But so they had, I guess some people view them in a bit of a nicer light than we used to, but yeah. That's
true. That's definitely true.
So he's left the industry to pursue his passion for wildlife preservation. So that's I guess really cool for him, but it's just, I don't know, it felt like it came out of nowhere, considering we're here sitting waiting for more news about Beyond Good and Evil 2. But he basically said that, you know, like, he's been in the industry for more than 30 years, and he just, really wants to fully focus on wildlife. And I think he's got a sanctuary that he's setting up in France as well. But the Ubisoft also, I guess, put out a statement, and Ancel himself said about those games that he's been working on that, that essentially the teams are now very autonomous and the projects are doing really well, and that, we should be seeing some stuff soon. So for anyone that's worried... Yeah, go.
Go on, sorry.
I was going to say...
No, I was just going to say, this is all BS, right?
What do you mean?
This is total crap, man. Beyond Good and Evil 2 has been... Something's wrong with that game. Like, for them to show it in 2017, and it looked fairly mature, man. Like, they had gameplay footage. And now we see nothing, and now they're talking about new gameplay footage next year for this game. Like, this guy, to me, has been sacked. And he said, you know what, I'm just going to retire because I've sort of had a long enough career in the industry.
I mean, if that's the case, that's the case. But he's leaving the industry nonetheless, so it doesn't change. Basically, he's left the industry. So, I'm obviously looking forward to seeing how specifically Beyond Good and Evil 2 ends up. It's what it is these days. But good on him for I guess making a change, whether or not he was did it voluntarily or not. If he's really wants to get into that, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point he does come back into the industry, maybe with his own studio. It feels like he's the kind of personality that might do that and work on some smaller independent titles. It just wouldn't surprise me if that happens. But if this is truly the change, then all the best for him.
Yeah, who he reminds me of, and I don't know that much about him or the guy I'm about to talk about, but I've seen interviews and heard them speak, but he reminds me of Lorne Lanning, the guy behind Oddworld. And, like we didn't mention that, there is a new Oddworld title coming out to PS5. But I don't know, they're sort of like, they give me the same kind of vibes, and I totally agree with what you're saying, that I could imagine in 5 years' time or 3 years' time, he comes back with his own studio and he's making a game, and the whole wildlife thing is, put out to pasture.
Yeah, I think it's either way. It seems like I've always loved the games that I've played of his. Love Rayman 2, Rayman 3, Beyond Good and Evil as well. Even the King Kong game that he worked on with Peter Jackson, that was actually pretty decent. So I'm looking forward to what happens.
I mean, like most people would kill for his resume, in the sort of how critically and also just culturally well received the games that he worked on were. I mean, even like up to Rayman Legends, like that's an awesome game. Like that's a really, really cool game. And for that to be essentially now his last game that he saw to the end, I think, great career. Like he's done a great job, but I do think he'll come back. And I think that there's probably a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with Beyond Good and Evil 2, which is kind of like what drove this whole decision to come out. All right, well, let's get into a new style of segment that I've titled the Editorial. Do you like the little pun there?
I don't know how I feel.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm devastated now. So this little segment is where I get up on my soapbox, as I tend to and like to, and pontificate about a certain topic. I
think it's more like you're putting a soapbox on top of your existing soapbox and getting on that segment.
True. Yeah, totally fair. I'll take it. So the sort of point that I want to make this week, and this is not going to be a weekly occurrence, so I shouldn't say this week, but in the show, is why I think everyone should be very excited that Mario 3D All-Stars is actually emulated and isn't sort of ported or recoded or remastered. So this news came out actually because the game leaked, so people got their hands on it a little bit earlier, and they're able to decompile the game a bit and disassemble it and work out that actually it literally is taking the ROMs and then sort of making them emulated. And there's actually a really cool video from a really cool creator. We've mentioned him already, Modern Vintage Gamer. He's also Aussie, but I think he lives in the States now. And he actually talks in depth about this. but they've done some really, really cool stuff behind the scenes. So there's a couple of things. There's, they use a mechanism to actually capture like machine code instructions where, basically the game, the ROM itself, and the way it's all coded, it's saying, give me this texture, and they're injecting things into it, which says, hey, don't take that texture, take this one instead. And what that means is instead of a low-res texture, they dynamically take a high-res texture and then insert it into the game. So, we're playing like a ROM on an emulator, but then with this weird kind of cover over the top of it, where it's like kind of almost like a bit hacked, which I think is like so cool, like how they've been able to actually make that work to a point where, reviewers who are playing this game, they didn't know that that's how it worked. They reviewed the game and they were like, look, it seems like they've taken the game directly and just put it on the system. They haven't really tweaked the game. It's definitely not a remaster, like you see with Demon's Souls, as we spoke about earlier. Now, I do understand people are getting frustrated about this, and I do think the price tag for this game, it's one of those weird ones where, probably the fair consumer price would have been more like a, $50 Australian, $40 US. Now, let's be real, everyone's bought this game. So why would they charge any less? Like, that's capitalism. But one thing that I would say is, and why I think we should be excited about this is, what they've done now is, and the team that worked on this game is actually the team behind the NES and Super Nintendo emulators for the Switch, and they did the Super Nintendo Classic consoles and the Nintendo Classic consoles. I think why we should be so excited about this is because effectively this has proven that they've absolutely figured out a way and a framework to take Nintendo 64 games, to take GameCube games, to take Wii games, and then bring it on the Switch, but bring it on the Switch in a format where people don't even really perceive what the difference is between their playing as compared to with the Wii and Wii U Virtual Console. Like, I've gone back and played that, and to me, it's very clear straight away that these are like inferior, like emulated versions of the games, like to the point where even the colors are off in the games, like they're muted or dark. It just doesn't feel right, it doesn't look right. There was massive input lag with Mario 64 on the Wii U. It's just, to me, unplayable. Whereas with these versions, and I've fired it up, I got the game on Friday, like they play really well. Like, I know that people aren't happy that they're not like a full remaster, and it would have been awesome if they had done that. But I think we should all be excited that given that they've done that, I think that this, to me, makes it feel inevitable they'll either release more games from those libraries in collections like this, or probably the more likely outcome, which is that they'll roll out, a Nintendo 64 online component to the Nintendo Switch Online package. And maybe they offer sort of a Nintendo Switch Online Plus, where you get a library of Nintendo 64, GameCube, and Wii titles. And there's just so many games in that back catalog that are so awesome, and a lot of people have never played, that I actually think overall, like if you're going to take it, this is actually a better thing that's happened like this, given that this may then open the door to all these other games that we can play. So that's my editorial. What are your thoughts, Swinny?
I'm just looking forward to the day when I can play Superman 64 injected with high-res ring textures.
That's funny. That's funny.
Look, as part of this, I'm actually going to hold my thoughts, not so much on, I guess, the topic at large, but specifically Mario 3D All-Stars, because I played a little bit of it this morning, but I want to, I guess, maybe we'll both give our impressions of it next week when we've had a bit more time with all three versions. And then I'll probably, give my thoughts on, I guess, how they have or haven't adapted the game to, to play on the modern console. So,
yeah, no, that's fair enough. Cool. All right, let's get into my favorite segment of every week, the bargain bin. So this week is a special week for me as a huge Rocket League fan. Rocket League, it's finally been announced. Unfortunately for them, Nintendo accidentally leaked the date because they actually updated their store with the free-to-play date. So in the States, it's 23 September. In Australia, it's 24 September, just because of the time zone differences. And yeah, Rocket League's going free. And that's also going to coincide with the new season of Rocket League starting, as we mentioned in a prior podcast. I'm actually super pumped about this. I actually fired up Rocket League again. I've been playing it quite a bit recently, and the update's already been pushed. It's obviously not gone live to free to play yet, but they've actually changed a bit of the UI. And to me, I know a lot of people don't like it. I'm kind of surprised. I really like it. I think it looks a lot cleaner. It's a lot simpler. What they've done with it, and they've just broken up the categories in a really obvious way for people. Like, hey, here's casual, here's competitive. So yeah, if you haven't played this game before, 100% jump on it. It's coming out Thursday after this goes live. It's free on all platforms, and it's also integrated across all platforms. So you have one account, and you can, play it on the Switch, play it on the Xbox, play it on the PlayStation or your PC. It's going to be on Epic Game Store. It's no longer going to be on Steam. And yeah, it's just a friggin' awesome game. And it's going to be fascinating to see how many people jump on this game. Because, a lot of people already grabbed this game. A lot of people bought this game. It's consistently been in like a top 20 seller for a long time. So, is this actually going to make any difference? Like, are there going to be a stack of new players because of this? Or is it kind of going to be a bit of a relative blip? It's going to be pretty interesting to see. Are you keen to jump back on it? I know that you play it from time to time.
Not for a bit. I've got so many games I'm in the middle of. So I'll jump back on at some point, probably in a couple of months, and play some, maybe start doing some nightly games again. But
yeah,
I did this before. I'm kind of happy to take a break for, like half a year and then come back to Rocket League again, and just, it's the kind of game you can just jump back in straight away. So
yeah, and for me, like, because I own it both on PC, Steam, and the Switch, I'm actually pumped because the biggest thing for me is that cross-platform element. That, it's awesome that now I can play it on the Switch and it's linked into the same account as my PC one. And yeah, it's a way inferior version on the Switch, but it's still nice to play every now and then. Just on the Switch, I play casual, just when I'm in bed or whatever. Like, it's pretty cool. And just getting to Epic Games. So last week it was only Stick It to the Man that was announced as the free game this week, but they added 2 other games. So Football Manager 2020 and Watch Dogs 2, which had previously been free post the Ubisoft Forward event, but now you can get it for free on Epic Game Store. So that's free this week. And next week, Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 Complete Edition is going to be free, which, weirdly enough, I'm looking forward to that. I love those kind of games. I think they're really good fun. Going on to Nintendo Switch. So some announcements on Nintendo Switch Online, which is pretty cool. So new games coming to SNES and NES in terms of the online versions. So we've got Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest, which is very timely, given that, we both had chatted about reviewing and going through all of the Donkey Kong Country series. So now that they're coming out on Switch, it's almost perfect for that. So we'll have to lock in the date when we're going to play this one. We also have Mario's Super Picross, which, weirdly enough, I've actually played this game quite a lot on PC, like in the emulated version, because it's a Japanese game.
Same.
So, you have as well. How weird is that? Because it's all Japanese. And it's weird. They're releasing it just in Japanese. Like, they're not translating it.
Well,
so it's kind of odd.
You don't really need to know much Japanese to play the game.
I'm not saying it's like insurmountable. It's just odd because, someone who doesn't know that and then they put it on, it's like, a regular person's like, what the hell's going on with this? This is like not English. What's going on?
I think there's at least one other title that I've seen that's on there that does the same. I just can't remember what it is.
Oh, yeah. It's like 1 or 2. So Puyo Puyo, the Puyo Puyo game is Japanese. And, just to round it out, so the Peacekeepers and NES game called Special Cybernetic Attack Team. And there's an acronym for that.
Yeah, okay. What's the acronym? It's SCAT.
You can say it. It's the most unfortunate title.
SCAT is the word. Okay. That's actually a pretty good.
Yeah,
that's actually a pretty good game. I reckon. Like, I haven't played it since I was, dabbling in NES emulation for the first time, but it wasn't bad.
Well,
Scat's not bad.
I never. I've got that on tape now. I don't think it was called that. Thank God. I don't think it was called that in Australia. I think in the PAL regions it was called something else. I'm just looking it up now, like something about New York from memory.
It's called Golden Showers.
It was called Attack in New York in Australia.
What's that?
In Europe.
Attack in New York. Oh, that's
Oh no, Action. Sorry, Action in New York. Yeah, imagine it was like Action new something. Like,
a new action
League.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so like surprise announcement. No one was expecting this. They just made All Stars free on Nintendo Switch Online, and yeah, it actually got a lot of buzz, especially with Diddy's Conquest. And now it feel like it'd be really weird if they didn't release Donkey Kong Country 3. I think.
Yeah, definitely. I was always surprised that same with the SNES Classic that Donkey Kong Country 2 was never there. So
Yeah,
great to see them add it to this.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then switching over to the PlayStation, so I just wanted to call out with the PlayStation Plus collection on PS5. So I'm just going to quickly zip through the 18 games that they've announced that are going to be a part of that. So obviously that's when the PlayStation 5 comes out. So that'll be the 12th of November this year. So it's Batman Arkham Knight, Battlefield 1, Bloodborne, Days Gone, Detroit Become Human, Fallout 4, Final Fantasy 15, God of War, Infamous Second Son, The Last Guardian, Last of Us Remastered, Monster Hunter World, Mortal Kombat 10, Persona 5, Ratchet & Clank, Resident Evil 7, Uncharted 4, and Until Dawn. Like, really good lineup. Like, that is crazy, man. There's so many of those games that are almost must-plays.
Oh, what? There's no scat there?
You mean Attack New Assault
League
people? No, League, sorry. Yeah, like I think that's the whole argument around quality versus quantity. That's like there's a hell of a lot of quality there. And do you want to cover the Xbox titles?
Yeah, so I think it's just some updates about games leaving Game Pass this week on September. Got Bad
News, boo.
Bad North, Westerado Double Barreled, and Ukulele leaving Xbox console Game Pass. And on both console and PC, Dirt Rally 2 and Dishonored 2 are both leaving. And it's I might actually have to play some Dishonored 2 because I was like halfway through the game and I think I don't own it. So I should probably get back to that one before that league.
See, okay, like I've thought so much about this. And, you know, I feel like we've spent the last 10 episodes talking about whether I'm going to get Game Pass or not. I think like the fact that games go off, and I'm glad that we do this and we talk about which games are going off Game Pass. It's so off-putting to me because I don't have the ability to just quickly drop everything and play a game for, 30 hours in a single week. Sometimes I just can't do that. Yeah, I think that it really kind of puts me off Game Pass big time because of that.
Oh, that's them's. I can't remember the term. It's something. Them's the something.
Come on, them's the breaks.
Them's the breaks. That's it. That's just
yeah.
Go.
You got to be a fanboy and go. No, you're just wrong.
Nah, like man, I've said it before. Like
I know.
Like Netflix, like you know, stuff comes and stuff goes, and if that doesn't work into your way you play games, then it's not probably for you.
No, fair enough. All right, and let's get into my look, my view.
Oh yeah, can I? I know you're about to intro, but I gotta like just say something. So you said that, hey, I've got some impressions, but it's a secret game. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Then on our run sheet, we've got like tabs at the bottom for each of our episodes. You put like for Int's eyes only in a tab, and you color it red, and you put it right next to like this week's run sheet.
Have you clicked it?
I have not clicked it. Still.
Oh, good boy.
Knowing you how good you are with like scripting and stuff, you'd probably like unleash a virus if I clicked open that tab or something. If I viewed it. But basically, I haven't looked at it, but man, you made it hard not to click on it. It's like and actually, I remember it had been moved and you moved it back.
Well, I got to move it back so that because we're in the show, so so I can click on it. And yeah, okay. So let's get into it. Let's get into what my inquiry has been this week.
Oh, inquiry.
So I don't know why I tried to keep this a secret from you. I just kind of did it, and then it became a big thing, and I didn't want you to know. So we were chatting last week about a game, and off the cuff, I was like, oh yeah, I've played this game a little bit, and I'm kind of interested in it, and I'm definitely interested in the sequel of this game. And then for whatever reason, I got it into my head, like I had to play this game, like I had to play it. And the game is Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition on the Switch. So I don't know why I was so compelled to get it. I just think, like, with the announcement of Age of Calamity coming out in 20th of November this year, and I'm a huge Breath of the Wild fan, like massive Breath of the Wild fan. Some part of me was just like, oh, I'm definitely going to get this Age of Calamity game. Then, it'd be good to, have my head around these games. So, like, kind of as background, obviously, well, not obviously, but with Hyrule Warriors, it's part of, I guess, the broader Dynasty Warriors Muso sort of, it's almost a genre, but it's actually just one company, or like, one publisher making these games. And just looking at it, it's so crazy, man. Like these hack and slash games with, hundreds of enemies on the screen. They've got 9 games in the mainline series, Dynasty Warriors, but then I counted it roughly, and there's like 21 spin-off games in the same sort of mode and model. And it's just like, it's so bizarre to me that this company has the grip on this kind of like idea. Like there's not really that many other people who are known doing this, and it feels like everyone just goes to these guys to make the spin-off game.
You saw some stuff like 99 Nights and stuff earlier in the last generation try to kind of play their hand at it a bit.
Yeah.
None of them took off. It was always these games.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. So like even really different companies like Nintendo, you've even got stuff like Persona Scramble, like going into this hack and slash style Muso game. So yeah, like I said, I don't know why I had it in my head. I had to play this game. I don't know. It just got into my head. I think part of it was like, I knew that it would be hard to find physically. I'd heard people say you pretty much can't get it. So then I did a bit of searching, and I actually found a physical copy not too far from my house. So I went and picked it up. And just for context, like this is essentially, like it's a really weird game in a way, because Hyrule Warriors came out on Wii U, and that was like literally almost to the day 6 years ago that game came out. And then 2 years after that, the 3DS port came out. So it's definitely a port, but in the port, they introduced new features and new characters. And then the Wii U game also had DLC. And then Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, which came out 2 years ago, 2018, that combined elements of, well, like pretty much everything in Legends and in the original Wii U, and just mashed it all together and then added some more stuff to the game. So it's like, oh, okay, like there's I know everyone's always said that this game has a stack of content, and I don't know, like I keep saying, like Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I feel like I'm going to get that, and I'm like, oh, I might as well get my head around what these kind of games are. So like in terms of the game, like what is the game? What's it play like? This game to me is so bizarre. Like playing it and seeing it, like, and I think playing it versus seeing it is really different. And more so than any other game that I've seen recently.
Can you just clarify, is this the first time you've played a Muso title?
Well, like I said, I'd played and honestly for like 10 minutes, Hyrule Warriors and Legends. So like on the Wii U 3DS.
Outside of Hyrule Warriors, so it's the first.
Outside of that, nothing. Okay. Zero.
All right.
Yeah. So this is my first experience with these hack and slash Muso style games, right? So, I booted it up, and okay, initial impressions that are hitting me. I'm booting it up and it's loading up and everything like that. And I'm like, this feels like a fan game ripoff. Like it just felt like instantly this is not a Nintendo game. Like I get it. It's like Breath of the Wild. Oh, sorry, not Breath of the Wild. Legend of Zelda, like that whole universe. And like it's taking from all the like Legend of Zelda games that I can see of. Maybe apart from Legend of Zelda 2. I haven't seen anything from Legend of Zelda 2 so far. But like, it just like everything about it, I'm like, this doesn't feel quite right. It just feels, like a not quite right version of Zelda as even a spin-off. So that kind of hit me at first. I was like, oh, okay, it's a bit strange. And then I started playing this game, and you just jump into it straight away. And dude, like I love this game. I love this game so much, and I don't understand why.
I wasn't sure
it's so
why you were going to go on that one.
Well, I legitimately, like I was chatting to a mate about it. I'm like, this game is legitimately like a bad game. Or not a bad game. That's unfair. It's just not a great game. And it's so janky. It's so bizarre, the game. Like, there's parts of the game, like, it's basically a cutscene, and the cutscene's choppy as hell, right? Like, it's like honestly running in single frames a second, some of the cutscenes. And then you get into the game itself, and it runs really smoothly at times, and you've got like 50 enemies on the screen, and it's totally fine. It's just, the game makes no sense, like what it does at times. And by the way, I have heard that with Persona 5 Scramble, so this style of game, but in the Persona universe, or Persona 5 universe, that the new Switch port of that is actually pretty good, like in terms of how it's running. So maybe they've made improvements on the engine, but yeah, just playing the game, I'm like, this is such a dumb game. Like, and I keep on writing things in my notes like mindless. And you know, I was chatting to a mate, and this is what it reminded me of. Put your head back into like Star Wars Episode 1. You know when you get like the Jedi and they're like fighting the droids in that, and they're just like slicing through it like butter. Like, it's like they're not even looking. They're just like, and they're all just dying. Like, this game. This game is like mowing the grass. Like, the grass offers no defense. You're just going, and there's something so relaxing that for me about this game, and the fact that, like, you know, it's set in the Zelda universe, which I love. It's just like, I can't stop playing it, man. I feel like I played it for like 30 hours this week since I got it. I just always pick it up all the time, and I'm like, I can just keep on smashing through this. And I played all like the different modes, and boy, oh boy, man, there's a lot of content in this game. Like, all these characters can be leveled up. There's all like skill trees for all the characters. To me, kind of feels like not that much point of the skill trees. You know, I'm not deep enough in the game for that. And also the game feels very, very easy, and it really tries to push you to play in the easier mode when you first start playing the game. Like, it's really explicit, like, hey, you probably should play in the easy mode. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then even playing it now, I'm like, I think I might bump it up to hard, because the game's just way too easy otherwise. But yeah, man, it's a bizarre game, man. It's a bizarre game that I honestly can say I love this game.
So, and does it make you more hyped for Age of Calamity now?
Well, that's the problem, man, because I love this game so much and it's got so much content. I feel like even my head's going, shit, I need to get through this game, because, you know, I definitely am going to get Age of Calamity. I'll probably get it for Christmas, like as a Christmas gift. But once that comes out, and how much I love Breath of the Wild, and this is like the perfect way to play something like that for me. Because it's, you know, like the story in this game is so dopey. It's so freaking dopey. It's just like, you know, it's full of like stupid tropes from Japan. And it seems like even worse in Japan with these kind of tropes. And, but I love it. I can't explain it, man. Someone said, you know, why do you love this game? It's really, really hard for me to explain, other than when I play it, it's so relaxing. I don't have to think. I feel like I could play this game and have chat to you, like, while I'm playing it. Well, because there's not much to it, you know?
I tell you, it'd be interesting to play a Breath of the Wild game where your weapon doesn't break every 10 enemies.
Oh, God, you're such a hater on Breath of the Wild. Oh. Such a hater.
Oh, it's great.
But yeah, like, so this game's awesome. So, like, kind of like the summary for me is just, you know, the question that I ask myself is, you know, should you buy this game in 2020, given that Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is coming out? And I'll probably put 3 things on it. Like, first off, you know, if you've played these Muso hack and slash games and you like them, and you like, you know, Zelda, and you can get it for like a reasonable price. Like, I don't think I would pay full price for this. I think I paid like $49 or something, and I had like discounts on top of that. So it probably worked out to be like $44 I got this game for Australian. So like $30 American. I think that's like a really good deal. Like, I definitely would do that. So, you know, I think if you're in that camp, I still think, even given that the new game's coming out, this is well worth getting, because this just has so many cool elements from the history of Zelda. Like, as much as I say it's a fan game, and I don't mean that dismissively, really, like, you know, you can see the passion from the developers. Like, they genuinely love Zelda. Like, you know, all the things that they've worked in, and the little nuances and little nods and things like that, and some of the obvious ones as well. Yeah, it's just really cool. Like, I just thought it was like such an odd game, and I'm so shocked that, like, I'm really shocked how much I like this game. Like, I thought, honestly, I thought I bought this game and I thought I'll regret buying this. I even thought I'll probably return this game because you can do that with EB games. But yeah, I'm like total opposite. I love this game, man. It's one of my favorite games this year.
Of another year.
Yeah, true. Yeah, wait till we get around to doing 2018. Well, I guess like technically you could go 2014. So yeah, no, it's cool. I like it.
Oh, so you've been catching up on some Hyrule Warriors, and I have been playing something a lot more recent. I have been playing Dontnod's latest game, Tell Me Why. So, Tell Me Why is it's an episodic adventure interactive story game from Dontnod Entertainment and published by Xbox Game Studios. So that means it's exclusive for Xbox and PC, unlike the majority of their previous games, which have generally been multi-platform. So with this game, the first chapter came out on the August 27th, and all 3 chapters, there's only 3 of them, have been released now. So I was originally going to just give my, I guess, Swinpressions of the first chapter, but I've played through the whole game, so this is almost like a review at this point. And it's on Game Pass, so I didn't have to pay anything outside of what I pay for Game Pass, so that was always a benefit. And I think for this kind of game, it is a huge benefit because it's not probably the kind of game I'd immediately go, I'm going to go out and purchase that. But because it's available, I'm saying, hey, and I want to have a chat about it, I thought I'd jump in. So Dontnod, they essentially they hit the industry with Remember Me back in 2013. But they really made their name with Life is Strange, which the first series came out in 2015. And Life is Strange is a very much what this game is in a lot of ways. So if you've ever played any of those games, whether or not it was in the first series, Before the Storm, or Life is Strange 2, the gameplay is very similar. But the reason why I was keen to really play this was because I was a huge fan of their game Vampire, which came out in 2018 and is now on essentially every current console. I love that game, but it's very different. That's like an action RPG set in, like in England, but like I can't remember the exact time frame. But it was very different in this. But I definitely see a lot of that game in the way that this game is presented, and I think Dontnod do a great job in creating moments and things that kind of stick with you. But as for Tell Me Why, so this game was showcased in one of the recent Xbox events, and I'd say that the trailer that they showed was very representative, but didn't make me go, I really want to play that. But it's an interesting game, and it essentially is based around. So you've got a brother and sister, and I'm not going to go into spoiler territory, by the way. Everything I'm talking about this game was either in the trailer or you learn in the first 5 minutes of the game. So it's like just the story. So it's a very focused story about a brother and sister named Tyler and Allison. They're twins, basically returning after 10 years to their family home in a small town in Alaska known as Dallas Crossing. And it's all about them returning after a family tragedy that happened 10 years ago, which resulted in the death of the mother. And so the plot's all about them trying to piece together everything that happened there. And the twins had been split up since then. So they hadn't seen each other in person, or I don't believe they've seen each other in person for 10 years. With Allison staying behind in the town with the foster parent, who's the chief of police, which works into the whole storyline as well. And Tyler being sent to a juvenile detention center because he was the one that killed the mother. So that's all stated up front, right? We know that he stabbed the mother in self-defense. So it's all about trying to figure out why things happened, which is really cool. Like it's almost like a mystery, but between a small group of about 7 to 8 people in a small town. So you're just trying to as the brother and sister, try to figure out why was the mother drove to basically the mother chase them with a shotgun and things. It's like, what happened, right? And it's a lot of the themes of this, and this is really important, it was all about identity. So whether or not it's unpacking the mystery behind the mother and what happened, what caused her breakdown, but also about the identity of the siblings themselves, and in particular Tyler, who's actually a trans man. And this game has received a lot of praise for how it actually tackles the trans and identity themes. And they worked closely with GLAAD, and they actually have a trans character playing Tyler. And I think it's handled really, really well. And it's not just they're tacking on, oh, you play as a trans person for, sake of diversity. It's very important to the storyline because it's very central to the relationship with the mother. And I can't get into more of it why that's important, but it's really, really interesting how the story revolves around it. And it's really refreshing, this is one of the first games that the main character is trans, and you have to really, it opens, I think, your mind up to a lot of, well, this person's going back to, they were a kid when they left the town, they're coming back to the town for the first time, and so you see all the reactions of the people to, oh, Tyler, oh, okay, and how awkward it is. And sometimes you see how people, go out of their way to kind of make that, to make an effort to kind of, to address that, or some people that are really awkward or rude about it. And it's just really, really interesting. And one thing I'll say about the story as well, that for anyone that's familiar with Life is Strange, this story also has some out there elements as well. So while it is very much, oh, you're in a small town, it gets a little crazy at times. So, but it is only it's about a 9-hour game when you factor in all 3 chapters. So it does tell a very, very focused story, and of a core group of about 7 to 8 people, including your main characters. As for the actual gameplay itself, so integot, I don't think you've ever played. Have you ever played a Telltale game or Life is Strange or anything like that?
No.
So
No, I played What Remains of Edith Finch.
Okay, so
but that's a bit different.
It is, but I wouldn't say it's too dissimilar in some ways, where a lot of the game is essentially you walking around interacting with objects, and with this game, it's full 3D exploration. There's no fixed camera or anything, so you're walking around, and you're essentially, interacting with objects, learning about the story and the characters through that, and talking to the characters themselves. And there's a lot of choose your own adventure here, so a lot of decision making. That's where the Telltale Life is Strange stuff comes really into it, how it impacts the outcome of the story, and quite a few cool puzzles as well. And it's all revolving around this fairy tale storybook that they put together as kids with the mother, and so these different stories that then relate to the history and everything, and some quick play events which actually fit in pretty well. It's definitely not a graphical powerhouse, but it doesn't really need to be. I mean, it's running on the Unreal Engine, but the character animations are really good and the voice acting is great, which is the most important part in this game. Some really good facial animations. There's some scenes where they've got to convey some pretty serious emotions. So I think they do really well. And just the setting, the small fishing town in Alaska, it's all snowed over. It feels right. I think they've done a really good job there, and they make some really good licensed music choices. So overall, I think, the presentation's pretty good. It suits what the game needs to be. But I will say I did have some problems with this game. I've written down here, installation woes.
Installation woes.
Man, this basically. So I played through chapter 1, and then I'm like, oh, I need to play through chapter 2 and 3 before the podcast. So I hadn't done that, and yesterday I'm like, okay, I need to play through these. So the first time I loaded up a week ago and played through chapter 1, it was 8 gig patch. I'm like, okay, cool, all right, whatever. I haven't played this game, blah blah blah, right? Then I install chapters 2 and 3, and I go to load them. Another 8 gig patch a week later. I'm like, okay, all right, okay. Then I load episode 2 again, another 7 gig patch. I'm like, come on, I just want to play the game at this point. But it was an episode patch for it was a patch for episode 3, and I'm like, oh, whatever, all right, just install. Then I go to load it again. Now it's another 5 gig patch for episode 2. It was altogether 4 bloody patches, and I'm just like, oh my god. But other than that, I really enjoyed the game. The story and the characters really actually captivated me. I don't know if it's going to be everyone's cup of tea. I have a feeling I'd actually like to go back to play Life is Strange games to see how they compare. I think a lot of people love the first 2 series of that, and maybe a little let down by this one because it's quite short. Some of the narrative stuff didn't pay off as well as I thought it would. But I've heard that potentially this game may have originally been much larger in scope and it got scaled down. So that might be part of it, is that they had a much grander I guess, narrative threads that they wanted to work on, but they needed to work into a nice condensed 3-chapter story. As I mentioned, they've got a really good flair for moments. Just like there's a nice scene where you're just sitting there fishing, ice fishing with a character, and it's just you chatting this character and learning more about them, and just really really well done. As I said, it's not for everyone. The game's pretty slow paced, so it might not hook people. But as I said before, it's on Game Pass, so you can give the first chapter a shot. If you don't like it after the first hour, then you haven't really lost anything but that hour. So I don't think there's got anything to lose. But it's honestly, I've been playing so much Kingdom of Amalur. It's just a nice break from mindless action. Hyrule Warriors it reminds me of that. And overcomplicated systems, that in nearly every modern game, it's just you're walking around talking to people and learning about a cool story. So you might end up loving it like I did.
Yeah, nice. And I guess the way I'd always look at these games, because I feel like with these type of games, and is there a name for them? Because I feel like the title walking simulator is so derogatory for these kind of games.
People generally don't consider these ones walking simulators. They're just they're adventure games, but they're not point and click adventures really. So they're not.
Yeah.
To call it a point and click, you pick up items, but there's no inventory, which is kind of a key thing to point and click. So they're not like your Monkey Island or your Grim Fandangos or anything. So I think adventure game is kind of probably the most suitable term for them. When I think adventure, walking simulator, I do think something like Edith Finch or Gone Home, and games where you're not really interacting with many people. You're just kind of just walking from point to point, and it's all about the experience of that. This is very much you're making narrative choices, you're picking up items, you're speaking to people, things like that. So it's much more interactive than those games generally are. So
yeah. And would you say that this game is so compelling that it should bring people who aren't really even into those games in the first place, or it's more of a game that if you like those style of games, it's well worth playing?
It's a tough one because it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. No way at all. I spent like half an hour just walking around a store looking at items in the game just because I wanted to hear what the character said about a random bottle of bleach and things. I didn't need to. I was keen to explore and learn more about the world and what the characters, how they think. A lot of people just love to play Tetris or jump in a Call of Duty match and things. They don't care about learning about this. And there's times when it might ruffle people's feathers a bit because obviously it's tackling some tough issues, whether or not about identity or if it's about there's a lot of mental illness and things as well. And it's some of that stuff might also be a bit troubling to people as well. But I think it's I think it's worth a shot because it's on Game Pass. And if you don't like how it kind of, as I said, like the first hour, by that point you've seen how the game plays. You kind of get an idea of what it's going to be storyline wise. So that'll be kind of, I guess, the point you make decision whether or not you want to sit there for the whole time. It's like any TV series. So this is very much like a TV series game in a way.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, sounds good. Sounds awesome. All right, well, I think that wraps us up for this week's episode of Big Week in Gaming. As always, if you want to help us out, reach out to us on Twitter or through YouTube, and definitely give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app, because that helps us grow, or share it with your mates. With that said, I'd like to say bye-bye.
See ya.